The moon cast spectral fingers through the ancient oaks of Shadow Mist Forest. Eleanor ran, her breath coming in desperate gasps, twigs snapping beneath her worn leather boots. Behind her, orange flames danced among the trees as the hunting party from Ravenwood pursued her with torches and muskets. Their voices carried through the night air, twisted by hatred and fear. "Find the witch! Don't let her escape!" Eleanor's heart hammered against her ribs. At 21, she had grown accustomed to sidelong glances and whispered accusations, but never before had the villagers' fear erupted into such violence. The acrid smell of gunpowder filled her nostrils as a musket discharged. The ball splintered bark inches from her head. She ducked lower, her long auburn hair catching on brambles as she plunged deeper into the forest's embrace. Marshal Blackwood led the hunting party, his muscular frame silhouetted against the torchlight. Once the son of Ravenwood's blacksmith, now a self-appointed witch hunter. His voice boomed through the darkness, commanding like thunder. "Spread out! The demon-eyed witch can't have gone far!" Eleanor pressed her back against an ancient oak, her chest heaving. Moonlight filtered through the canopy, illuminating her most cursed feature, eyes like liquid mercury, shimmering with an otherworldly silver light. She had hidden them for years, with downcast gazes and wide-brimmed hats. Tonight, they betrayed her location with each fearful glance toward her pursuers. As she caught her breath, memories surfaced unbidden. Her grandmother's wrinkled hands braiding her hair before the hearth fire. The only person who had never feared Eleanor's strange eyes. "Your eyes are not a curse, child," her grandmother had whispered on her deathbed 3 winters ago. "They are your heritage, your strength. When the time comes, remember who you are." Eleanor had never understood those words. Now, with the hunting party closing in, they echoed like a prophecy unfulfilled. The forest seemed to shift around her. The usual nocturnal sounds, hooting owls, rustling undergrowth, chirping crickets, fell silent. An unnatural stillness descended, as if the woods held its breath. Eleanor sensed something watching her from the shadows, something ancient and patient. Voices approached. Eleanor pushed away from the tree and ran again, deeper into Shadow Mist's heart, where villagers rarely ventured. Stories of travelers vanishing without trace had protected these woods for generations. Tonight, those tales were her only hope. 3 days earlier, life had been different. Difficult, but predictable. Eleanor worked as Ravenwood's unofficial healer and huntress, living in her grandmother's cottage at the village edge. While the townsfolk distrusted her eyes, they valued her knowledge of herbs and her skill with a bow. Fevers broke under her care. Winter stores grew fat with her hunted game. They tolerated her presence, keeping their children at a distance while accepting her remedies with averted gazes. Thaddeus Montgomery, Ravenwood's elder and former colonial militia captain, had been different. His weathered face showed respect, if not warmth, when Eleanor delivered weekly medicinal supplies to the village hall. His steel-gray hair and ramrod-straight posture spoke of military discipline, but his eyes held something else when they met hers, an unsettling recognition that Eleanor couldn't decipher. "Your remedies saved Jenkins's youngest from the fever," Thaddeus had acknowledged last market day, his voice carrying the graveled quality of advanced years. "The village appreciates your skill, girl." It was the closest thing to acceptance Eleanor had known since her grandmother's passing. Then the storm came. Black clouds rolled over Ravenwood like an invading army. Lightning tore open the sky with supernatural fury. Thunder shook foundations. Rain fell in sheets, flooding fields and washing away newly planted crops. For 3 days, the tempest raged with unnatural persistence. When the skies finally cleared, the devastation was complete. The village's grain stores stood waterlogged and rotting. Half the livestock had drowned or scattered. 3 houses had collapsed, and the church steeple lay shattered across the town square. Eleanor had stepped from her cottage to help, gathering medicinal herbs for the injured. She found Victoria Harrington, once her childhood companion, struggling to pull possessions from her family's partially collapsed home. Though Victoria's father had forbidden their friendship years ago, Eleanor moved to help without hesitation. "Let me help you, Vicky," she offered, reaching for a waterlogged trunk. Victoria's eyes had widened, first with recognition, then with something darker. She stepped back quickly. "The storm came from shadow mist," she whispered, glancing around nervously. "Father says it's unnatural. They're saying it's because of—" She couldn't finish the sentence, but her gaze flicked to Eleanor's silver eyes. Before Eleanor could respond, Marshal Blackwood's voice had thundered across the devastated square. "There she is, the witch who brought this upon us!" He stood atop a pile of debris, pointing accusingly, his face contorted with righteous fury. A crowd quickly gathered, their expressions hardening as they surveyed their ruined livelihoods. "My crops are destroyed!" shouted a farmer. "My son's leg was crushed when our roof collapsed!" cried another. Marshall's eyes gleamed with vindication. "We've tolerated her too long. Those cursed silver eyes, my grandfather spoke of such abominations, harbingers of destruction." The crowd's murmurs grew louder, angrier. Eleanor backed away slowly, hands raised. "I didn't cause this," she pleaded. "It was just a storm. I've only ever tried to help this village." "Lies." Marshall advanced, his massive frame threatening. "The day after you were born, wolves killed 3 children in their beds. When you turned 13, the river ran dry for a month. Now this." The crowd pressed closer, transformed by collective fear into something primal and dangerous. Eleanor felt the weight of generations of superstition bearing down upon her. Only Thaddeus's sudden appearance had prevented immediate violence. "Stand down!" The elder's voice cracked like a whip across the square. The crowd paused, ingrained respect for authority momentarily overriding their bloodlust. Thaddeus stood between Eleanor and the mob, his weathered face impassive. "This is Ravenwood, not Salem. We do not condemn without trial." Eleanor saw Marshall's jaw clench in frustration. The blacksmith's son had never respected the old ways or the village elder. "What trial does a witch need?" he spat. "Look at her eyes. They're not natural." "Nevertheless," Thaddeus continued firmly, "we will follow proper procedure. Tomorrow at midday, we will convene the village council. Until then, the girl remains under house guard." 2 militiamen had escorted Eleanor home, standing watch outside her door. Through her window, she had watched as the village gathered supplies, rebuilding what could be salvaged. No one approached her cottage for healing herbs or remedies. The separation felt final, like a severed limb. Night had fallen when Eleanor heard sounds of commotion outside. Peering through a crack in her shutters, she witnessed a group of villagers returning from Shadow Mist Forest. They carried something between them, something that elicited gasps of horror from those who gathered around. It was a deer, or what remained of one. Its form was twisted, unnaturally contorted. Black veins spread across its hide like ink spilled on parchment. Most disturbing were its eyes, completely black, weeping a viscous tar-like substance. Eleanor had never seen anything like it in all her years of hunting. "The blight has returned," an old woman wailed, crossing herself frantically. "God save our souls!" Eleanor's blood ran cold. Her grandmother had spoken of the blight only once, in hushed tones, describing it as an ancient corruption that had plagued the region generations ago. "Pray you never see it return in your lifetime," she had whispered. The crowd's attention turned toward Eleanor's cottage. Marshal Blackwood's voice rose above the others. "You see? Her witchcraft brings the blight upon us. We cannot wait for morning." Before Thaddeus could intervene, the mob surged toward Eleanor's home. She grabbed her hunting knife, a small pouch of dried herbs, and fled through the rear window as the front door splintered under the assault of angry fists. And now she ran through Shadow Mist Forest, pursued by those she had once healed, hunted by neighbors whose children she had delivered into the world. The chase had lasted hours. The hunting party's stamina was flagging, but their determination remained undiminished. Eleanor pushed on, her legs burning with exhaustion. The forest grew denser, the paths less defined. Ancient trees towered overhead, their gnarled branches forming cathedral-like arches that blocked out the night sky. Eleanor paused at a small clearing, momentarily disoriented. Something was different here. Luminescent mushrooms formed perfect circles on the forest floor. Strange flowers glowed with inner light, blooming despite the darkness. A brook bubbled nearby, its water shimmering with an otherworldly phosphorescence. Thirst overcame caution. Eleanor knelt beside the stream, cupping her hands to drink. The water tasted sweet, almost like honey, and seemed to flow through her veins with restorative power. She splashed some on her face, washing away dirt and tears. Looking into the water, her reflection stared back. Pale skin, high cheekbones inherited from her grandmother, and those unmistakable silver eyes that had marked her as different since birth. In the forest's strange light, they seemed to pulse with inner fire. A twig snapped. Eleanor whirled, knife drawn, expecting Marshall or his hunters. Instead, she found herself facing an enormous bear. Its massive form blocked the clearing's edge, standing upright at nearly 8 feet tall. But this was no ordinary bear. Its fur was patchy, revealing skin marbled with black veins. Its muzzle was deformed, stretched into an unnatural snarl. Most terrifying were its eyes, solid black orbs that leaked dark fluid down its face. The blight. The creature had been consumed by it. The bear roared, the sound distorted and wrong, like metal scraping against stone. It dropped to all fours and charged. Eleanor scrambled backward, knowing her small hunting knife stood no chance against such a monster. Her back pressed against an ancient oak, nowhere to run. She raised her blade in a final, futile gesture of defiance. The attack never came. A blur of midnight fur intercepted the bear, slamming into its side with bone-crushing force. A wolf, the largest Eleanor had ever seen, its black coat gleaming like polished obsidian in the moonlight. It stood between Eleanor and the blighted bear, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling from deep within its chest. Most striking were its eyes, crystal blue, like frozen lakes under winter skies. They held an intelligence far beyond any animal Eleanor had encountered in her years of hunting. Those eyes briefly met hers, and Eleanor felt a jolt of recognition, though she had never seen this creature before. The bear recovered from the initial impact and lunged at the wolf. What followed was a battle of primal fury, claws slashing, teeth snapping. The wolf moved with impossible grace and speed, darting in to tear at the larger creature's flesh before dancing away from retaliatory swipes. Despite the wolf's skill, the bear's corrupted form seemed resistant to injury. Where the wolf's teeth tore flesh, black ichor flowed instead of blood, and the wounds sealed themselves with unnatural speed. Eleanor watched, transfixed by the deadly ballet. When the bear pinned the wolf momentarily, instinct took over. She whistled sharply, a hunting signal her grandmother had taught her, and threw her knife with practiced accuracy. The blade embedded itself in the bear's eye, one of the few vulnerable points on any beast. The blighted creature reared back, roaring in pain and fury. The wolf seized the opportunity, lunging for the bear's throat with lethal precision. There was a sickening crunch as powerful jaws closed on the bear's windpipe. The massive creature thrashed, then collapsed. Its corrupted body twitched violently before going still, black fluid pooling beneath it. The wolf stood over its fallen enemy, sides heaving with exertion. Then it turned those impossibly blue eyes toward Eleanor. She remained frozen, uncertain whether she had merely exchanged one predator for another. The wolf approached slowly, head lowered, no aggression in its posture. It stopped before her, close enough that Eleanor could feel its warm breath. Then it did something extraordinary. It bowed its massive head, almost like a subject before royalty. Eleanor cautiously extended her hand. The wolf allowed her touch, its fur surprisingly soft beneath her fingers. A connection formed, wordless yet profound. She felt as if the creature understood her in ways no human ever had. The sound of distant voices shattered the moment. The hunting party had found her trail again. The wolf's ears pricked forward. It looked at Eleanor, then toward a barely visible path deeper into the forest. Its intent was clear even without words. "Follow me." Eleanor hesitated only briefly. The villagers offered only persecution. This strange wolf had saved her life. The choice was simple. She followed the midnight wolf into the heart of Shadow Mist Forest as the voices of her pursuers faded behind them. The path twisted through increasingly ancient trees. Glowing plants illuminated their way, and unseen creatures watched their passage with curious eyes that reflected the strange light. Exhaustion finally overcame Eleanor. Days without proper sleep, the emotional trauma of rejection, and the physical toll of her flight combined to drain her last reserves. Her legs buckled beneath her. As consciousness slipped away, she felt the wolf move beside her, supporting her weight, guiding her collapse. The last thing Eleanor registered was the strange warmth of the wolf's body against hers, and those intelligent blue eyes watching over her as darkness claimed her mind. When Eleanor woke, she found herself in a cave unlike any natural formation she had ever seen. Smooth walls curved overhead, etched with symbols that seemed to shift when viewed directly. A fire burned in a stone hearth, though no smoke filled the chamber. Furs and woven blankets formed the comfortable pallet where she lay. Most remarkable was the furniture: chairs, tables, and shelves filled with books and curious objects, all crafted with exceptional skill. This was no wild animal's den, but a home. "You're awake. Good." The deep voice startled Eleanor fully conscious. She sat up quickly, hand instinctively reaching for her knife, only to remember she had lost it in the bear. A man stood across the chamber, regarding her with interest. Tall and powerfully built, with angular features that might have seemed harsh if not softened by his expression of genuine concern. Long black hair fell past his shoulders, and a neatly trimmed beard framed his strong jaw. He appeared to be in his late 30s, though something in his bearing suggested far greater age. Most striking were his eyes, crystal blue, identical to the wolf that had saved her. "You," Eleanor whispered, understanding dawning. "The wolf." The man nodded, a slight smile touching his lips. "I am Ronan, guardian of Shadow Mist Forest." He made a formal half-bow. "And you, silver-eyed one, are the answer to a very old prophecy." Eleanor's hand went instinctively to the small knife on the table beside her bed. She grasped it firmly, pointing it toward the stranger. "Stay back," she commanded, her voice steadier than she felt. "Whatever you are, I want answers before pleasantries." Ronan's smile didn't falter. He moved to a chair near the fire, sitting down with relaxed grace. "You're safe here, Eleanor of Ravenwood. If I meant you harm, I would have left you to the blighted bear, or to your own kind." He gestured toward the knife. "Keep it if it comforts you. You have questions. I have waited lifetimes for the chance to answer them." Eleanor's mind raced. This man had saved her life, true, but he had also transformed from wolf to human before her eyes, or at least while she slept. Every childhood tale warned against trusting the denizens of Shadow Mist Forest, yet where else could she go? Ravenwood had cast her out, and something in Ronan's eyes, something ancient and knowing, called to her in ways she couldn't explain. She lowered the knife, though she kept it close. "What are you?" "I am what your people would call a skinwalker," Ronan replied, "though that term carries undeserved fear. My kind has guarded the boundaries between worlds since before humans built their first settlements in these lands." "Worlds? Boundaries?" Eleanor's brow furrowed. "You speak in riddles." "Not riddles. Truths long forgotten by your kind." Ronan leaned forward, firelight dancing across his features. "This forest is more than trees and earth, Eleanor. It is a threshold between realms, a place where the veil thins." He gestured around them. "The strange plants that glow without sunlight, the waters that heal beyond nature's capacity, the creatures that speak with human tongues, all exist because Shadow Mist stands at the crossroads of worlds." Eleanor thought of the luminous mushrooms, the sweet-tasting brook, the unnatural stillness she had sensed. Perhaps there was truth in his words. "And what does this have to do with me?" she asked. "With my eyes?" Ronan's expression grew solemn. "Everything." He rose and moved to a shelf, retrieving an ancient leather-bound book. Opening it carefully, he revealed illustrations of men and women with silver eyes, wielding what appeared to be light against encroaching darkness. "You are Silverthorn," he said simply, "the last of an ancient bloodline tasked with protecting the boundaries between worlds. Your eyes are not a curse, but a birthright. They allow you to see what others cannot, to perceive the true nature of things, to channel energies beyond mortal understanding. Eleanor stared at the illustrations, a cold sensation spreading through her chest. The figures in the book could have been her relatives, with the same distinctive eyes that had marked her as different her entire life. "If what you say is true," she said slowly, "then why was I abandoned in Ravenwood? Why did my parents leave me to be raised by my grandmother, feared and hated for what I am?" Pain flashed across Ronan's features. "They didn't abandon you, Eleanor. They sacrificed themselves to protect you." Before he could explain further, a commotion sounded outside the cave. Ronan tensed, his form already beginning to blur at the edges as if preparing to shift. The cave entrance parted, revealing not danger, but two more wolves, one gray with amber eyes, another light brown with green eyes. They entered cautiously, their gazes fixed on Eleanor with unmistakable curiosity. Ronan relaxed, addressing the newcomers. "She has awakened. Alert the council." The wolves disappeared back through the entrance. Ronan turned to Eleanor, extending his hand. "There is much more you need to know, but words alone will not suffice. Come, I want to show you something that belongs to your bloodline." Eleanor hesitated only briefly before taking his offered hand. His skin was warm, almost hot to the touch, and she felt that same inexplicable connection she had experienced with the wolf by the stream. As they moved toward the cave entrance, something fell from the folds of Eleanor's dress. The pendant Thaddeus had pressed into her hand during the trial. She hadn't had time to examine it properly until now. It was an ancient silver medallion, engraved with symbols matching those on the cave walls. At its center was a tree with roots extending into a perfect circle, branches reaching upward toward what appeared to be stars. Within the tree's trunk was embedded a small silver stone that caught the light with unnatural brilliance. Ronan froze when he saw it, his eyes widening in disbelief. "The Elder's Mark," he whispered. "Where did you get this?" "Thaddeus gave it to me," Eleanor replied, confused by his reaction. "Before the village turned on me completely, he told me to find the old wolf in the deep forest." Ronan took the medallion reverently, turning it over to reveal more engravings on the reverse side, a wolf howling beneath a full moon. "This has been lost for generations," he said, voice thick with emotion. "It belonged to the last Silverthorn guardian who worked alongside my people." He looked at Eleanor with newfound wonder. "Thaddeus knew. All this time, he knew what you were." As Eleanor processed this revelation, the medallion began to glow, responding to her touch with increasing brilliance. Images flooded her mind. A woman with silver eyes like her own, standing before an encroaching darkness. The woman's face bore familiar features: Eleanor's own nose, her grandmother's chin, an ancestor fighting a battle against something ancient and terrible. The vision ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving Eleanor gasping. "What was that?" she demanded. "Your heritage calling to you," Ronan answered softly. "The medallion holds memories of your bloodline. It recognizes you as its rightful wielder." He returned the medallion to her hands, closing her fingers around it. "The blight has returned, Eleanor. The corruption you saw in the bear is only the beginning. It will spread, consuming everything in its path, including your village." "Why should I care?" Eleanor's voice hardened. "They would have killed me. Because regardless of how they treated you, innocent lives will be lost, and because fighting the blight is what you were born to do." Ronan's blue eyes held hers. "The silver in your eyes marks you as Silverthorn, just as surely as the wolf in my blood marks me as guardian. We are bound by ancient oaths to protect the boundaries, regardless of personal cost." The medallion pulsed warmly in Eleanor's palm, as if affirming his words. She thought of Victoria's frightened face, of the children who had hidden from her in the village, of Thaddeus who had apparently known her secret all along. "I need to know everything," she said finally. "About the Silverthorns, about this blight, about my parents. No more half-truths or cryptic statements." Ronan nodded solemnly. "Then come with me to meet the Council of the Forest. They have awaited your return for longer than you can imagine." As they stepped from the cave into Shadow Mist's eternal twilight, Eleanor felt something shift within her, a purpose awakening, a destiny unfolding. The silver medallion hummed against her skin, and for the first time in her life, she didn't try to hide her luminous eyes. Whatever waited in the depths of Shadow Mist Forest, she would face it head-on. Not as Eleanor the outcast, but as Eleanor Silverthorn, heir to an ancient legacy she was only beginning to understand. The forest opened before Eleanor and Ronan like a living cathedral. Ancient trees stretched skyward, their canopies interwoven so tightly that only dappled moonlight penetrated to the forest floor. Luminescent fungi clung to bark and stone, casting an ethereal blue glow across their path. The air hummed with unseen life, a symphony of rustling leaves, distant calls, and the subtle melody of wind through hollow branches. Eleanor followed Ronan along a winding path that seemed to materialize before them and vanish behind. Her silver pendant pulsed against her skin, warm and comforting, as if recognizing the journey. Every sense felt heightened in this strange realm. Colors appeared more vivid. Scents carried stories. Old growth and fresh bloom, mineral-rich earth and sweet decay, the musky perfume of creatures that had passed this way before. "The forest recognizes you," Ronan said, noticing her wonder. "It remembers the Silverthorn bloodline, even after so many years." Eleanor touched a passing trunk, feeling energy pulse beneath her fingertips. "It feels alive, not just living, but conscious." "Because it is." Ronan's voice carried reverence. "Shadow Mist is the oldest forest in this land. It remembers the first humans to walk beneath its boughs. It remembers the wars, the peace, the changing of the world beyond its borders." They emerged into a clearing where moonlight poured unfiltered from above. At its center stood a circle of massive stones, each taller than 2 men and covered in the same shifting symbols Eleanor had observed in the cave. The ground within the circle was carpeted with silver-blue flowers that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. "The council awaits within the ancient ring," Ronan explained. "Before we enter, you should know that not all members believe in your return. Some have grown bitter after centuries of waiting." Eleanor squared her shoulders. "I've spent my entire life being judged and found wanting. This won't be new." A sad smile touched Ronan's lips. "Your spirit is remarkable, Eleanor Silverthorn. Remember that strength when they question you." They approached the stone circle. As Eleanor crossed the threshold, the silver flowers illuminated brilliantly, creating a pathway of light that led to the circle's heart. The pendant at her throat grew almost uncomfortably warm, pulsing in tandem with the blossoms underfoot. 3 figures awaited them. The first, a woman of impossible age, her skin textured like bark, eyes green as spring leaves. She stood as tall as the surrounding stones, hair a cascade of flowering vines that moved with apparent sentience. This was no human being, but something far older. The second figure appeared more conventional at first glance, a woman of middle years with silver-streaked auburn hair and knowing eyes. Yet she emanated power that raised the fine hairs on Eleanor's arms. A collection of pouches, bones, and crystals hung from her belt, marking her as a practitioner of old magics. The third was an elderly man, bent with age yet radiating vigor in his sharp gaze. His beard reached nearly to the ground, white as fresh snow. His gnarled hands gripped a staff topped with a crystalline orb that contained what appeared to be swirling storm clouds. "The Council of Shadow Mist," Ronan announced formally. "Sylvan, Ancient One of the Forest." The tree woman inclined her head slightly. "Myrtle, Keeper of Forest Wisdom." The middle-aged woman nodded. "And Fenris, Elder of the Wolf Clan." The old man's eyes narrowed, assessing Eleanor critically. "We have waited long for this moment." Sylvan's voice rustled like wind through autumn leaves. "The return of a Silverthorn to the forest. Yet I sense confusion in this one. She knows nothing of her heritage." "Another disappointment," Fenris muttered, his voice gravelly with age, "like all the false hopes before." Myrtle raised a hand for silence. "Let us not judge before testing." The pendant responded to her. That alone deserves our attention. She approached Eleanor, studying her silver eyes. Tell me, child, what do you know of your parents? Eleanor straightened, refusing to be intimidated. Only that they left me with my grandmother as an infant. She raised me until her death 3 winters ago. She spoke little of them, only that they had important work elsewhere. Important work? Fenris scoffed. Is that what she called abandoning their duty? Their sacrifice? Peace, Wolf Elder, Ronan interjected. She cannot be blamed for what she was not told. The blame lies with us all, Sylvan's voice creaked, for allowing the knowledge to fade, for failing to protect the last Silverthorns. Eleanor's patience thinned. I've been hunted from my home, attacked by corrupted beasts, and told I'm the last of some ancient bloodline. If you have answers, I deserve to hear them clearly, not in riddles and accusations. Silence fell across the circle. Then, surprisingly, Fenris laughed, a bark-like sound of grudging approval. She has the Silverthorn spirit, if nothing else. He thumped his staff against the ground. Very well, girl. Truth you shall have. Myrtle gestured, and the air between them shimmered. Images formed, a history told in light and shadow. Long ago, she began, when this land was young, the boundaries between worlds were thin. Creatures of light and shadow passed freely between realms. Most meant no harm, but some brought chaos and destruction. The illusion showed magnificent beings of light alongside twisted shadows that corrupted all they touched. The Silverthorns were humans blessed or cursed with the ability to see these beings, to understand the nature of the boundaries, and to mend them when breached. Their silver eyes allowed them to perceive what others could not. Eleanor watched as figures with eyes like hers confronted darkness, channeling light from within themselves to seal rifts between worlds. For generations, they served as guardians of the threshold, working alongside the forest protectors, the wolf clan, the tree folk, the keepers of old knowledge. Balance was maintained. The images shifted, showing harmonious cooperation between humans with silver eyes and beings of the forest. Then came the blight. Fenris took up the tale, his voice grave. One of the shadow beings, more cunning than the rest, found a way to corrupt the natural world. It could not physically enter our realm in full, but it sent tendrils of its essence through the weakened boundaries. The illusion darkened, showing plants and animals twisting into unnatural forms, their essence corrupted by black veins. The Silverthorns fought valiantly, but the blight was cunning. It targeted them specifically, hunting them through centuries until only a handful remained. Images showed silver-eyed warriors falling one by one, their light extinguished by encroaching shadow. 200 years ago, Sylvan continued, the last full council of Silverthorns performed a desperate ritual. They could not destroy the blight completely, but they managed to force it into dormancy, to push it back beyond the boundaries. The cost was tremendous. All but one sacrificed their lives in the working. The illusion showed a circle of silver-eyed individuals channeling light into a central point, their forms gradually fading until only one remained, a young woman with features startlingly similar to Eleanor's own. Elara Silverthorn survived, Myrtle said softly. She carried the bloodline forward, teaching each generation to recognize the signs of the blight's return, to be ready when the final confrontation came. And now it has returned, Ronan concluded, just as the prophecy foretold. When darkness rises from ancient sleep, silver eyes shall wake to weep. The last of the line shall stand alone to claim the legacy or surrender all. The illusion faded, leaving only moonlight illuminating the circle once more. Eleanor's mind reeled with revelations. The pendant felt heavier against her skin, burdened with generations of duty and sacrifice. "You think I'm this prophesied savior," she said finally. "This last Silverthorn meant to confront an ancient evil." "We do not think," Fenris replied. "We know. Your eyes cannot lie, girl. The question is whether you possess the strength your ancestors had, or if the line has grown too thin, too weak with passing years." Eleanor bristled at the implication. "My grandmother taught me to survive in a world that feared me. I've hunted, healed, and endured alone since her passing. Do not mistake my ignorance of your ways for weakness, Wolf Elder. Fenris grinned, revealing teeth unnaturally sharp for a human. There, that fire. Perhaps there is hope yet. Sylvan stepped forward, towering over Eleanor. Your parents were the last trained Silverthorns. When the signs of the Blight's awakening appeared 22 years ago, they performed a temporary binding ritual, similar to what their ancestors had done, but smaller in scale. Understanding dawned like a cold sunrise. 22 years ago, when I was born. Myrtle nodded solemnly. The ritual required sacrifice. They gave their lives to buy time, time for you to grow, to reach maturity before the Blight fully awakened. Your grandmother took you to Ravenwood to hide you from the Blight's servants, who would have hunted a defenseless Silverthorn child. They abandoned me to die? Eleanor's voice cracked. They died so you might live, Ronan corrected gently, so that when the time came, now, you would be ready to finish what they started. Eleanor turned away, emotion threatening to overwhelm her carefully maintained control. Her entire life had been shaped by a destiny she never knew existed. The villagers' fear, her grandmother's cryptic lessons, her strange affinity for the forest, all pieces of a puzzle now clicking into terrible place. And if I refuse this legacy? She asked, facing the council once more. If I choose another path? Then all worlds will fall to the Blight, Fenris answered simply. Starting with your human settlements, Ravenwood is merely the first to witness its return. Eleanor thought of the blighted bear, its corrupted form and tortured existence. She imagined that corruption spreading to the village, to Victoria, and even to Marshall and those who had hunted her. Whatever their crimes against her, such a fate was beyond deserving. What must I do? She asked finally. Relief visibly passed through the council members. Sylvan's wooden features softened, Myrtle smiled, and even Fenris nodded with grudging approval. First, you must be tested, Myrtle explained, to awaken the dormant powers in your blood. Only then can we determine if you are strong enough for what lies ahead. Fenris stepped forward, his ancient eyes challenging. I will set the first trial. The silver-eyed girl must journey to Moonshadow Pool, deep within the oldest part of the forest. There, she will receive visions of her bloodline's past, if she is truly Silverthorn. I will accompany her, Ronan began, but Fenris cut him off with a sharp gesture. No, Wolf King. This she must do alone. Only then will we know if she possesses the strength required. Eleanor met Fenris's gaze steadily. I accept your challenge, Elder. When do I begin? At dawn, he replied. Rest tonight, for the journey will test more than your endurance. As the council meeting concluded, a small black shape fluttered down from the surrounding trees, landing on a stone near Eleanor. It was a raven, larger than any she had seen, its feathers gleaming with iridescent blue highlights. Most surprising were its eyes, intelligent and knowing, regarding Eleanor with unmistakable curiosity. This is Raven, Myrtle introduced with a hint of amusement. He speaks when it suits him and holds his tongue when it doesn't. He will guide you to Moonshadow Pool. The bird cocked its head. Silverthorn, it croaked, the human word startling from its beaked mouth. Silver Eyes return. Interesting times. Eleanor stared, then collected herself. After everything else she had witnessed, a talking bird seemed almost mundane. At least I'll have company on this trial. Company and commentary, Raven replied, preening. Mostly commentary. The council dispersed, each member departing in their own fashion. Sylvan simply melted back into the forest, her form becoming indistinguishable from the surrounding trees. Myrtle disappeared in a swirl of autumn leaves. Fenris thumped his staff once more on the ground and transformed, not into a wolf as Eleanor had expected, but into an owl that soared silently into the night. Only Ronan remained, his expression troubled. Fenris sets a dangerous test. Moonshadow Pool lies in territory already touched by the Blight. You think I'm not ready, Eleanor observed. I think you've had no time to prepare, no training in your abilities. The council forgets what it means to be human, how quickly your kind must adapt. Eleanor smiled faintly. My kind has always been adaptable. It's our greatest strength." Ronan nodded, though worry still clouded his features. "Come, you should eat and rest before tomorrow's journey." They returned to Ronan's cave dwelling, where he prepared a simple meal of roasted venison and forest tubers. The food tasted better than anything Eleanor had eaten in years, infused with herbs she couldn't identify that seemed to restore her energy and calm her mind. As they ate, Eleanor studied her host with new awareness. "You called yourself a skinwalker earlier. The council named you Wolf King. Which are you?" Ronan considered before answering. "Both. Neither. My people were here long before European settlers arrived with their tales of skinwalkers and werewolves. We are guardians of the forest threshold, able to walk between human and wolf form as needed." "And king?" Eleanor pressed. "A title I neither sought nor desired." A shadow crossed his features. "It fell to me when the previous king, my father, was lost to the Blight's first awakening. I've led the wolf clan for nearly 2 centuries, watching the old alliances crumble as the Silverthorns dwindled." 2 centuries? Eleanor stared. "You appear no older than 40. A smile touched his lips. "My kind ages differently than yours. I was born during what your people called the French and Indian War." Eleanor tried to process this information. "And my bloodline? How long do Silverthorns typically live?" "Longer than ordinary humans, though not as long as my kind. Your grandmother was nearly 100 when she passed, though she appeared perhaps 60 to human eyes." Eleanor remembered her grandmother's vigor, even in her final years. Another piece of the puzzle falling into place. "There's so much I don't know," she murmured, "about what I am, what I can do." "The Moonshadow Pool will show you," Ronan replied. "If your bloodline accepts you, you will receive the accumulated knowledge of generations of Silverthorns, their memories, their skills, all passed to you through the waters." "And if the bloodline rejects me?" Ronan's expression grew solemn. "Then you will see nothing but your reflection, and we must find another way to awaken your abilities." Eleanor nodded, another question forming. "You knew my parents, didn't you?" Pain flashed across Ronan's features. "I did. Your father, Jonathan, was my closest human friend. He and your mother, Eliza, were the last trained Silverthorns. Jonathan was a scholar, cataloging the old knowledge. Eliza was a warrior, skilled with both blade and Silverthorn magic." "Tell me about them," Eleanor requested softly. "Not as Silverthorns, but as people." Ronan's gaze grew distant with memory. "Your father had a quiet humor that emerged at unexpected moments. He collected strange objects, interesting stones, unusual leaves, abandoned bird nests. Your mother sang constantly while she worked. She could mimic any forest sound perfectly, even fooling animals with her calls." He smiled faintly. "They argued intensely about small things, which berries tasted best, the proper way to track deer, but never about important matters. In those, they were always united. When they learned the Blight was stirring again, they never wavered in their duty, even knowing the cost." "Even knowing they would leave me alone," Eleanor said, a hint of bitterness in her voice. "They didn't intend for you to be alone," Ronan countered. "The plan was for you to be raised here, among the forest folk, trained from childhood in your abilities. But the ritual weakened the barriers more than anticipated. The Blight's servants found your location. Your grandmother fled with you to Ravenwood, believing human settlement would mask your presence." "She was right," Eleanor acknowledged. "Until now." "Until the Blight grew strong enough to sense you once more," Ronan agreed. "The storm that destroyed Ravenwood's crops was no natural phenomenon. It was the Blight testing its strength, drawn to your silver eyes." Eleanor's hand went unconsciously to her pendant. "So everything that happened, the villagers turning against me, my exile, was part of this larger pattern." "Fear is the Blight's most effective weapon," Ronan said grimly. "It twists minds before bodies. The corruption you saw in the bear begins as terror and hatred in human hearts." A scratching at the cave entrance interrupted their conversation. Raven hopped inside, shaking water from his feathers. "Storm coming," he announced. "Black clouds from the east, unnatural wind. The Blight tests its strength." Ronan stood immediately. "How far?" "Hours away, reaching toward the human settlement first." the bird's intelligent eyes fixed on Eleanor. "Testing you, Silverthorn, seeing if you'll run to save them." Eleanor rose. "We have to warn them, help them evacuate." "It's a trap," Ronan said flatly. "The Blight knows you're under our protection now. It seeks to draw you out, to catch you untrained and vulnerable." "Those are innocent people," Eleanor argued. "Whatever they did to me, they don't deserve to face this corruption without warning." "Your compassion does you credit," Myrtle's voice came from the cave entrance, where she now stood, rain beating on her cloak. "But Ronan is right. You are too valuable to risk." "Then send me," came another voice. A young woman stepped from behind Myrtle. Victoria Harrington, soaked to the skin and trembling, but determined. Eleanor gasped. "Vicky? How did you—" "I followed you into the forest," Victoria admitted. "Not with the hunting party. Alone. I've been wandering for days, lost until this woman found me." She nodded toward Myrtle. "She carries old blood," Myrtle explained. "Distant, diluted, but enough to sense the forest paths." Victoria stepped forward. "I came to warn you, Eleanor. After you fled, Marshall found something in the ruins of the old church. A hidden chamber beneath the altar with strange markings." She shuddered. "There was a book bound in black leather. When he opened it, shadows seemed to pour from the pages." Eleanor and Ronan exchanged alarmed glances. "The Blight has human servants," Ronan said grimly. "It appears one was hidden in Ravenwood, waiting." "Marshall changed after touching that book," Victoria continued. "His eyes, sometimes they look wrong, black, with no white showing. He's organizing the men, not to hunt you anymore, but to cleanse the forest. They have torches, axes, and something worse, black powder kegs from the old militia stores." "They intend to burn Shadow Mist," Ronan realized, "to destroy the threshold between worlds." "Which would allow the Blight full entry," Myrtle added gravely. "We cannot permit this." Eleanor's mind raced. "I need to complete the trial at Moonshadow Pool. If I can awaken my abilities, perhaps I can stop them without bloodshed." "The pool is a day's journey, even for one who knows the paths," Raven objected. "Not necessarily," Myrtle said thoughtfully. She withdrew a small pouch from her belt. "This powder, mixed with water from a forest stream, can accelerate your journey through the oldest paths. It's dangerous. The paths were not meant to be traveled so quickly, but it might be our only chance." Eleanor nodded firmly. "I'll do it. Tonight, not at dawn." "I'm coming with you," Victoria declared. "No," Eleanor and Ronan said simultaneously. "You don't understand," Victoria insisted. "I need to make amends. When you needed me at the trial, I remained silent. I've known you my entire life, Eleanor. I know you're not what they claim." Eleanor studied her childhood friend, seeing genuine remorse in her eyes. "It's too dangerous, Vicky. This journey might kill a normal human." "I'm not asking permission," Victoria replied stubbornly. "I'll follow even if you refuse me." Myrtle's lips twitched in what might have been a suppressed smile. The old blood in her veins might provide some protection, and having a witness from Ravenwood could prove useful if we hope to save the village. Eleanor looked to Ronan, who seemed torn. Finally, he sighed. "I cannot accompany you to the pool itself, but I can escort you through the first part of the forest. The most dangerous creatures avoid the Wolf King's territory." "Then it's decided," Eleanor said, relieved not to face the journey entirely alone. "We leave tonight." As preparations began, Eleanor took Victoria aside. "Why did you really come, Vicky? The truth." Victoria's composure cracked. Tears filled her eyes. "Because you were right all along. There's something evil in Ravenwood now, and it's not you. The night after you fled, I dreamt of darkness consuming everything. When I woke, there was a black stain on my bedroom wall, moving, growing. I knew then that the village elders were wrong." She grasped Eleanor's hands. "Whatever's happening, whatever you've become involved in, I want to help. We were friends once. I should have stood by you." Eleanor squeezed her hands in return. "There will be no turning back from this path, Vicky." "I know," Victoria replied with unexpected steadiness. "Some choices change everything that follows. This is mine." As they prepared to depart, Ronan approached Eleanor with a long object wrapped in leather. "This belonged to your mother," he said, unwrapping the bundle to reveal a slender sword. Its blade gleamed with an inner light, the hilt set with small crystals that caught and amplified the cave's illumination. "A silverthorn blade," he explained, "forged with metals from both worlds, tempered in moonlight, one of the few weapons effective against blighted creatures." Eleanor took the sword reverently, feeling its perfect balance. The hilt seemed to warm to her touch, the crystals pulsing faintly in rhythm with her pendant. "I never trained with a sword," she admitted. "Your blood remembers, even if your mind does not," Ronan assured her. "If the Moonshadow Pool accepts you, you'll know how to wield it." Myrtle approached with a small vial of iridescent blue powder. "Mix this with the water at the first stream crossing," she instructed. "Drink only half, save the remainder for your return journey. The forest paths will adjust for you, but the experience can be disorienting." "Like walking through dreams," Raven added, settling on Eleanor's shoulder. "Sometimes beautiful, sometimes nightmarish. I'll keep you oriented." Outside, the forest had transformed. Where before it had seemed mysterious but welcoming, now tension filled the air. Distant thunder rolled across the canopy. Leaves shivered without wind. The luminescent fungi had dimmed, as if hiding from an approaching threat. Eleanor strapped her mother's sword across her back, the pendant secure against her throat, and faced the darkening forest path. Victoria stood beside her, frightened but resolute. Ronan shifted seamlessly into his wolf form, massive and black against the night, blue eyes gleaming with intelligence. "To Moonshadow Pool," Eleanor declared, stepping forward to meet her destiny. They had scarcely traveled a mile when the storm overtook them. Rain lashed down through the canopy, turning the path to mud. Lightning split the sky with unnatural frequency, followed by thunder that shook the very ground beneath their feet. At the first stream crossing, now swollen with rainwater, Eleanor knelt and mixed Myrtle's powder with the rushing current in her cupped hands. The liquid transformed, glowing electric blue with swirls of silver. "Remember," Raven cautioned from a sheltered branch, "half now, half for return." Eleanor carefully divided the mixture, drinking her portion and offering the remainder to Victoria in a small flask. The liquid tasted of starlight and winter frost, burning down her throat like the finest spirits. Effect was immediate. The forest around them blurred, colors intensifying until they seemed to bleed into one another. Sounds elongated, a distant owl's call stretching into a haunting melody that lingered impossibly long. The rain transformed into glistening diamonds that hung suspended in air before dissolving into prismatic light. "Is this real?" Victoria gasped, eyes wide with wonder and fear. "Real enough," Raven replied, his form now trailing after images as he flew ahead. "The oldest paths exist outside normal time. Follow precisely." Ronan padded ahead, his wolf form seeming larger, more primal, less a mere animal, and more an embodiment of forest's wild spirit. He led them through passages that shouldn't exist, beneath fallen logs that became vast tunnels, through curtains of vines that parted like theater drapes, across stepping stones that rose from churning waters at their approach. Eleanor felt her consciousness expanding. Her silver eyes perceived layers to the forest invisible before, currents of energy flowing like rivers through earth and tree, pulses of light that connected living things in vast, complex patterns. The pendant at her throat resonated with these energies, occasionally pulling her toward certain paths as if possessing its own will. They traveled for what seemed both minutes and centuries. Victoria clung to Eleanor's hand, her face a mixture of awe and terror as reality bent around them. Ronan remained their constant guide, his form sometimes shifting, wolf to shadow to man and back again, as the paths twisted through different layers of forest reality. Then, without warning, they emerged into perfect stillness. The storm, the rain, even the sounds of the forest fell away. Before them stretched a small clearing where a perfect circular pool reflected stars not visible in the storm-clouded sky above. "Moonshadow Pool," Raven announced, landing on a nearby branch. "The memory of the forest, the heart of Silverthorn legacy." Ronan shifted to human form, his expression grave. "This is as far as I can accompany you. The pool accepts only those it deems worthy." Eleanor approached the water's edge, kneeling on the soft moss that surrounded it. The surface was perfectly still, black as obsidian, yet reflecting light from no visible source. "What do I do?" she asked. "Look into the waters," Raven instructed. "If the bloodline accepts you, you'll see more than your reflection." Eleanor leaned forward, silver eyes meeting their mirror image in the dark water. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the surface began to ripple, though no wind disturbed it. The ripples spread outward from where her reflection appeared, transforming the pool into a window opening onto somewhere, somewhen, else. Figures emerged in the depths, men and women with silver eyes like her own, dressed in clothing from many different eras. They regarded her silently, judging, measuring. Eleanor felt the weight of their collective gaze, generations of Silverthorns assessing their last descendant. "I am Eleanor," she whispered to the water, "daughter of Jonathan and Eliza. I seek the knowledge of my bloodline." The figures in the water conferred silently among themselves. Then one stepped forward, a woman with Eleanor's high cheekbones and determined chin, dressed in clothing from the early colonial period. "Blood calls to blood," the woman's voice seemed to emerge from the pool itself. "But worthiness must be proven. What would you do with our power, last daughter?" Eleanor considered carefully before answering. "Protect the boundaries between worlds, shield both human and forest folk from the Blight's corruption, complete what my parents began." "Noble words," another figure commented, an older man with a scholar's thoughtful gaze. "But intentions alone are insufficient. The Silverthorn legacy demands sacrifice. Are you prepared to give everything, as your parents did before you?" Eleanor thought of her mother and father, giving their lives to buy her time to grow strong, of her grandmother, living in exile to protect her, of generations of silver-eyed guardians maintaining the boundaries between worlds. "I am," she declared firmly. The figures nodded in unison. The woman who had first addressed her reached up from within the pool, her hand breaking the water's surface. Eleanor reached down without hesitation, clasping the outstretched hand. Connection formed, instant and overwhelming. Knowledge poured into Eleanor's mind like a river breaking through a dam, languages long forgotten, fighting techniques honed through centuries, understanding of energy currents and how to manipulate them, recognition of creatures that existed between worlds, methods to heal corruption and seal breaches in reality's fabric. Most precious were the memories, generations of Silverthorns living, loving, fighting, dying. Eleanor experienced fragments of countless lives, all connected by silver eyes and sacred duty. Then came specific memories, her parents. She saw them as they truly were, not through Ronan's descriptions or her own imagination. Her father's gentle smile as he bent over ancient texts, her mother's fierce grace as she trained with the very sword Eleanor now carried, their tears as they made the ultimate decision, placing their infant daughter in her grandmother's arms before performing the ritual that would claim their lives but secure her future. "We love you, Eleanor," her mother whispered across time. "We will always be with you." The connection broke suddenly. Eleanor fell backward onto the moss, gasping, tears streaming down her face. Victoria rushed to her side, supporting her. "Eleanor, are you all right? Your eyes, they're glowing." Eleanor blinked, bringing the world back into focus. Everything looked different now. She could see energy currents clearly, Victoria's life force pulsing warm gold through her body, Ronan's ancient power burning blue-white like contained lightning, Raven's spiral of purple-black wisdom. The forest around them hummed with interconnected power, beautiful and complex. "I saw them," Eleanor whispered. "All of them. All the Silverthorns. My parents." Her voice broke. "I understand now." Ronan approached cautiously. "The pool accepted you." Eleanor nodded, rising to her feet with new steadiness. "More than accepted. It completed me." She drew her mother's sword, which now felt like an extension of her arm. The blade gleamed with inner light that matched the silver glow of her eyes. "We need to return," she said with quiet authority. "Ravenwood is in danger, and now I know how to help them." As if in response to her words, a terrible scream tore through the forest, inhuman, filled with rage and hunger. The peaceful clearing shuddered, trees at its edge beginning to blacken as if burned by invisible fire. "The blight knows," Ronan growled, his form already shifting between human and wolf. "It senses your awakening. We've run out of time." "Blackthorn comes," Raven announced, feathers bristling. "With corrupted ones. Many corrupted ones." Through the darkening trees emerged a nightmare. A man-shaped figure with elongated limbs and a wolf's head, its fur patchy to reveal skin marbled with black veins, eyes like pools of tar fixed on Eleanor with malevolent recognition. "Silverthorn," the creature growled, voice distorted and wrong. "At last, my master will reward me greatly for your head." Behind him came a shambling horde of corrupted forest creatures, deer with twisted antlers, bears with too many limbs, birds with blackened wings, and hungry, unnatural beaks. All bore the unmistakable signs of the blight's corruption. Eleanor stepped forward, positioning herself between the monsters and her companions. Knowledge flowed through her veins now, as much a part of her as her own blood. She raised her mother's sword, which blazed with silver fire. "I am Eleanor Silverthorn," she declared, voice ringing with power that made the corrupted creatures falter. "Guardian of the threshold, and you, Blackthorn, traitor to your kind, shall not pass." The creature that had once been a wolf guardian snarled, black ichor dripping from its jaws. "We shall see, last daughter. We shall see." As the corrupted horde charged, Eleanor felt power surge through her body. Silver light blazed from her eyes and sword as she moved to meet the attack, the Silverthorn legacy fully awakened within her blood. Blackthorn charged, his corrupted form moving with unnatural speed. Eleanor met his attack with newfound grace, her mother's blade singing through the air with precision born of inherited memory. Silver light erupted where steel met corrupted flesh, forcing the creature back with a howl of pain. "The Silverthorn awakens," Blackthorn snarled, black ichor dripping from a wound that sealed almost instantly. "But awakening is not mastery, little guardian." Eleanor circled, sword held in the traditional stance of her ancestors. Knowledge flowed through her mind. Combat techniques honed over centuries, recognition of the creature's weaknesses, understanding of how to channel her power through the blade. "Victoria, stay back," she commanded, without taking her eyes off her opponent. "Ronan, protect her." The massive black wolf moved to Victoria's side, standing guard as the corrupted horde hesitated, awaiting Blackthorn's lead. Raven took flight, circling above the battle, calling warnings when creatures attempted to flank Eleanor's position. Blackthorn lunged again, claws extended. Eleanor parried, spinning inside his guard to deliver a slash across his torso. More black ichor sprayed, sizzling where it touched the ground. The wound began to close, but slower than before. "You cannot win," the corrupted wolfman growled. "My master grows stronger by the hour. The human settlement burns even now. Soon all will fall to the blight." Eleanor's heart seized at the mention of Ravenwood, but she maintained her focus. The memories of her ancestors warned against Blackthorn's tactics, distraction leading to fatal error. She channeled power through her pendant, feeling it resonate with the sword. Silver light intensified along the blade's edge. "Your master failed against my ancestors," she replied, voice steady. "It will fail against me." Blackthorn's corrupted face twisted in a mockery of amusement. "Your ancestors merely delayed the inevitable. As for you—" He gestured, and the horde surged forward. "You'll never leave this clearing alive." The creatures attacked from all sides, twisted deer with jagged antlers, bears with too many limbs, birds with beaks like serrated daggers. Eleanor moved in a blur of silver light, sword cleaving through corrupted flesh, each strike burning away the blight's influence. But for each creature she fell, two more emerged from the darkening forest. Ronan fought at her back, massive wolf jaws crushing corrupted limbs, powerful form knocking smaller creatures aside. Victoria had taken up a fallen branch, wielding it with desperate courage when creatures came too close. "There are too many," Victoria cried as a blighted fox nearly took her leg. Eleanor knew she was right. Despite her awakened abilities, she couldn't battle an entire corrupted army. She needed to change tactics. Drawing on her newfound knowledge, Eleanor thrust her sword into the earth. Silver energy coursed from the blade into the ground, spreading in luminous veins through the soil. The moss at her feet began to glow with the same silver light, spreading outward in an expanding circle. "What is this?" Blackthorn demanded, suddenly wary. "Purification," Eleanor answered, voice resonating with power. "The Silverthorn legacy." The silver light reached the nearest corrupted creatures. Where it touched, black veins receded. Some smaller animals, those not too far gone, were cleansed entirely, the blight burning away as they fled into the forest, restored. But the more heavily corrupted, including Blackthorn, screamed in agony as the silver light touched them. They retreated from the expanding circle, hissing and snarling. "This isn't over, Silverthorn," Blackthorn roared. "Your parlor tricks merely delay the inevitable." He and his remaining forces retreated into the forest, leaving Eleanor standing in a perfect circle of purified ground. The silver light faded gradually, returning to her sword as she pulled it from the earth. Exhaustion hit her immediately. She staggered, only Victoria's quick support keeping her from collapsing. "That was incredible," Victoria whispered, awe evident in her voice. "And costly," Ronan observed, shifting back to human form. "You've expended too much energy too quickly. The awakening usually takes days of adjustment, not minutes of battle." Eleanor nodded weakly. "I felt it, like drawing water from a well that's still being dug, but I had no choice." "You did well," Raven croaked, landing nearby. "First blood to the Silverthorn, but Blackthorn spoke truth about Ravenwood. Storm clouds gather there, unnatural in form. The blight tests its strength." Eleanor straightened with effort. "We need to get back. Warn them." "You need rest," Ronan countered. "Depleting yourself further could be fatal." "There's no time," Eleanor insisted. "Victoria, the flask with the remaining potion?" Victoria produced it from her pocket. The liquid inside still glowed with ethereal blue light, though fainter than before. "Enough for the return journey," Raven confirmed, "but barely." Eleanor took the flask. "Then we'd better not waste it." She turned to Ronan. "Will you come with us to Ravenwood?" Conflict played across his features. The Wolf King hasn't set foot in a human settlement in over a century. There are old prohibitions. "This is beyond old rules," Eleanor argued. "If the blight consumes Ravenwood, Shadow Mist will be next. The boundaries weaken further with each corruption." Ronan's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "I will come, but many will not welcome my presence." "They'll be too busy surviving to protest," Eleanor replied grimly. She raised the flask. "To Ravenwood, then. May we not be too late." The journey back through the ancient paths was more harrowing than the outward one. The forest itself seemed to resist their passage, branches reaching like clawed hands, roots rising to trip unwary feet. The blight's influence was spreading, corrupting even these timeless routes between worlds. Eleanor felt the change acutely. With her awakened senses, she could see the tendrils of darkness creeping through the forest's energy currents, like ink dropped in clear water. Her pendant pulsed with warning heat against her skin, responding to the encroaching corruption. They emerged from the ancient paths much closer to Ravenwood than expected. The forest's edge was visible ahead, but what should have been early morning light was instead an ominous, dark red glow. Storm clouds hung low over the village, swirling in unnatural patterns, occasionally illuminated by lightning that struck the same points repeatedly. "Mother of mercy!" Victoria gasped. "What's happening to our home?" Eleanor's enhanced vision revealed what ordinary eyes could not see, a vortex of corrupt energy centered on the village church, spiraling upward into the clouds. Black tendrils reached from this central point throughout the village, touching homes and fields, spreading like a disease through the community's lifeblood. "The blight has found a focal point," Ronan explained grimly. a place to channel its influence directly into your world. The book Marshall found, Victoria realized, the hidden chamber beneath the church, that's the source. Eleanor nodded, her hand tightening on her sword's hilt. A breach in the boundary, deliberately created centuries ago, then sealed and hidden by my ancestors. Her new knowledge filled in the gaps. The church was built over the seal to contain it. And now it's been reopened, Ronan concluded. We must close it quickly, before the blight can fully manifest. They approached the village cautiously. The normally bustling community was eerily silent. No smoke rose from chimneys despite the morning chill. No animals made their usual sounds. The crops in the fields had blackened overnight, twisted into unrecognizable forms that pulsed with unhealthy life. At the village edge, Eleanor stopped, surveying the scene with her silver eyes. There are people still alive, she reported, seeing the faint glow of human life forces within some homes. But they're hiding, afraid. Or under the blight's influence, Ronan warned. Be wary. Corruption affects humans differently than forest creatures. It works through their fears and hatreds first, before manifesting physically. Victoria pointed toward the village square. The church, that's where we need to go. Eleanor nodded. Stay close, touch nothing if possible. They moved through Ravenwood's deserted streets. Signs of hasty departure were everywhere. Doors left ajar, possessions scattered, a cart overturned in the middle of the road. More disturbing were the black veins that had begun to appear in the wooden structures, spreading like fungal growth across walls and doors. As they neared the square, a figure emerged from a side street. An elderly woman Eleanor recognized as the baker's wife. Relief surged briefly until Eleanor saw the woman's eyes, normal at first glance, but occasionally flashing solid black when she blinked. "Eleanor Silver Eyes," the woman called, her voice oddly flat. "You've returned. How unexpected." Eleanor raised her sword slightly. "Mrs. Holloway, are you well?" The woman smiled, the expression not reaching her eyes. "Never better, child. The Master has shown us the truth. We were wrong to fear you. You're special, important." She gestured toward the church. "They're waiting for you inside, all of us who remain. Marshall has something to show you." "The Master?" Victoria whispered, edging closer to Eleanor. "The blight speaks through her," Ronan murmured. "She's in its thrall, though not yet physically corrupted." Eleanor addressed the woman directly. "Mrs. Holloway, you're being influenced." "This Master isn't what you think. Let me help you." The woman's smile widened unnaturally. "Help? But dear, we don't need help. We've been enlightened. Soon all will join in the glory." She extended a hand toward Eleanor. "Come, they're waiting." "We need to get past her," Eleanor whispered to the others, "but without harming her if possible." "Allow me," Raven croaked from overhead. The bird swooped down, flying directly at Mrs. Holloway's face, wings flapping frantically. The distraction worked. As the woman batted at the persistent bird, Eleanor, Victoria, and Ronan slipped past, hurrying toward the church. Behind them, Mrs. Holloway's voice raised in alarm, calling out to unseen others. The village square presented a scene from nightmare. The ancient oak that had stood at its center for generations had transformed into something grotesque. Bark split to reveal pulsing flesh-like tissue beneath. Branches contorted into shapes that suggested screaming faces. The well at the square's edge bubbled with liquid too thick and dark to be water. Most horrifying was the church itself. Once Ravenwood's pride, the simple white clapboard structure had darkened, not with age or fire, but with spreading corruption. Black veins pulsed across its surface. The steeple, partially collapsed during the storm, had regrown into a twisted spire that seemed to impale the churning sky above. "By all the old powers," Ronan breathed, "the corruption is further along than I feared." The church door hung open, darkness beyond impenetrable even to Eleanor's enhanced vision. From within came chanting, many voices reciting words in a language that hurt the ears and mind. The old tongue, Eleanor recognized from her inherited memories. "They're strengthening the breach." "Marshall," Victoria said with certainty. "He's leading them." Eleanor turned to her companions. "I need to go in alone." "Absolutely not," Ronan objected. "I must," Eleanor insisted. "The Silverthorn blade can seal the breach, but only if I get close enough to the source. You two need to guard the entrance. Once the villagers realize what I'm doing, they'll try to stop me." Ronan's expression darkened. "It's too dangerous." "It's my birthright," Eleanor countered. "My parents died to give me this chance. I won't waste their sacrifice." After a long moment, Ronan nodded reluctantly. "Very well. But if you're not out in 10 minutes, I'm coming in after you." "If I'm not out in 10 minutes?" Eleanor replied grimly. "There won't be anything left to save." Victoria embraced her suddenly. "Be careful. Come back to us." Eleanor returned the embrace briefly, then stepped back, focusing her will. Silver light brightened in her eyes as she drew power from within. The sword in her hand responded, its blade shimmering with matching radiance. "For the boundaries," she whispered, the traditional words of her ancestors coming naturally to her lips. "For the balance. For all worlds." With that, she strode into the corrupted church, silver light illuminating her path into darkness. The interior had been transformed beyond recognition. Pews had fused together into organic shapes that pulsed with unnatural life. The walls wept a black substance that pooled on the floor, forming patterns that hurt the eye to follow. Where the altar had once stood, a gaping hole now descended into earth, surrounded by villagers kneeling in supplication. At the hole's edge stood Marshal Blackwood, nearly unrecognizable. His impressive physique had grown, muscles bulging grotesquely beneath skin marbled with black veins. In his hands he held the black leather-bound book Victoria had described, its pages glowing with sickly green light as he read from it. Most disturbing was his face, features fluid and unstable, shifting between human and something other. Only his eyes remained constant, solid black orbs that leaked dark fluid down his cheeks. The villagers kneeling around him included most of Ravenwood's prominent citizens. Thaddeus was notably absent, giving Eleanor a flicker of hope that the elder had escaped corruption. Eleanor's entrance caused an immediate reaction. The chanting faltered as heads turned toward the silver light she emanated. Expressions of fear, anger, and reverence played across corrupted faces. "The silver-eyed one returns," Marshall announced, his voice layered with another deeper tone beneath his own. "Right on schedule." Eleanor advanced steadily, sword held before her. "Release these people, creature. Your influence here ends now." Marshall laughed, the sound echoing unnaturally in the transformed space. "Influence? I merely showed them truth. The boundary between worlds is an artificial construct, maintained by your kind to keep humanity weak and ignorant. I offer liberation." "You offer corruption and death," Eleanor countered. "Nothing more." She was close enough now to see into the pit. It descended into absolute darkness, but her enhanced vision detected movement within, something massive stirring far below, reaching upward toward the opening, the breach in reality. "You're too late, Silverthorn," Marshall gloated. "The master comes. The boundary thins with every passing moment." Eleanor assessed the situation rapidly. The villagers, while corrupted, showed no signs of attacking. They remained kneeling, entranced by the ceremony. Marshall himself stood between her and the pit, the book generating the energy feeding the breach. Her inherited knowledge provided the solution. The book was the anchor point. Destroy it, and the breach would begin to close. "I don't think so," Eleanor replied, channeling power into her blade. With one fluid motion, she lunged forward, not at Marshall, but at the book in his hands. The corrupted man reacted with supernatural speed, jerking the book aside. Eleanor's blade missed its target but sliced across Marshall's arm. Black ichor sprayed as he howled in pain and rage. "Kill her!" he screamed, his voice fully inhuman now. The entranced villagers rose as one, eyes flashing black, fingers contorted into claw-like shapes. They moved toward Eleanor with jerky, puppet-like motions, their humanity subsumed by the blight's control. Eleanor dodged the first attacks, unwilling to harm people who were victims rather than willing servants. She parried grasping hands with the flat of her blade, the silver light causing corrupted flesh to recoil on contact. "Marshall!" she called out, trying to reach whatever humanity remained. "This isn't you! Fight the corruption!" "Marshall is gone," the thing wearing his form replied. "There is only the vessel now." He clutched the book to his chest with one hand while the other transformed, elongating into a whip-like appendage tipped with bony barbs. He lashed out, the unnatural limb extending impossibly as it sought Eleanor's throat. She ducked beneath the attack, rolling forward to close the distance between them. The villagers pressed in from all sides, forcing her to divide her attention. A blacksmith's powerful hands grasped her shoulder. The butcher's wife clawed at her face. Eleanor spun, releasing a pulse of silver energy that forced her attackers back without seriously harming them. "You cannot win," the thing that had been Marshall taunted. "For each one you spare, you weaken yourself. The Master appreciates your compassion. It will be your undoing." Eleanor knew he was right. She couldn't fight effectively while trying to protect the villagers from themselves. She needed a new approach. Insight came from her ancestral memories, a technique used in the past to cleanse minor corruption. It wouldn't free the villagers completely, but it might break the immediate control. Eleanor thrust her sword into the wooden floor. Silver energy coursed outward in a shockwave, flowing through the corrupted church. Where it touched the entranced villagers, they screamed, not in pain, but in release. One by one, they collapsed unconscious, the immediate hold of the blight temporarily broken. The effort cost Eleanor dearly. Her vision swam as energy drained from her core. She staggered, nearly falling, but kept her feet through sheer determination. "Impressive," Marshall, or the thing controlling him, acknowledged. "But futile. You've exhausted yourself for nothing. They will rise again when they wake, more firmly under the Master's control than before." Eleanor knew she had one chance left. The book remained her target, but Marshall held it too securely now, pressed against his corrupted form. She needed to separate them. A distraction came from an unexpected source. The church door burst open, admitting Ronan in his wolf form, accompanied by Victoria and, surprisingly, Elder Thaddeus Montgomery, wielding an ancient flintlock pistol. "Eleanor!" Thaddeus called out. "The sword! Use it as your mother taught you!" The mention of her mother triggered another flash of inherited memory, a technique Eleanor hadn't accessed before. Understanding flooded her mind. As Marshall's attention split between the newcomers and herself, Eleanor channeled the last reserves of her energy into her mother's blade. The silver light concentrated until the sword appeared to be forged from pure radiance rather than metal. "For the boundaries," she intoned, the ritual words coming naturally. "For the balance, for all worlds." With a single fluid motion, she hurled the sword like a spear directly at Marshall's corrupted form. The blade streaked across the space between them, a comet of silver fire. Marshall attempted to dodge, but the sword, guided by Eleanor's will and generations of Silverthorn purpose, adjusted its trajectory. It struck not Marshall's flesh, but the book clutched against his chest, impaling the ancient tome with uncanny precision. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. A scream tore through the church, emanating not from Marshall, but from the book itself. Green energy erupted from its pages, battling the silver radiance of Eleanor's blade in a spectacular conflagration. Marshall's body convulsed as the corrupting influence fought to maintain its hold. "No!" the layered voice howled. "The breach! The Master comes!" From the pit came an answering roar, a sound of such primal malevolence that it shook the foundations of the church. Something massive surged upward, a tentacle of pure darkness reaching for the world of light and life. Eleanor staggered toward the pit, weaponless but determined. Her pendant glowed with increasing brilliance as she drew upon its power. Silver light blazed from her eyes as she reached the edge of the darkness. "You will not pass," she declared, her voice resonating with the power of her bloodline. "This world is protected." She grasped the pendant with both hands, tearing it from her throat. Ancient knowledge guided her actions as she held it over the pit. The small silver stone embedded in the medallion blazed like a captured star. "With blood and light, I seal this breach," Eleanor proclaimed. "By the oath of the Silverthorn line, by the sacrifice of my parents, by my own willing gift, the boundary stands restored." She released the pendant. Instead of falling into darkness, it hung suspended over the pit, spinning faster and faster until it became a disk of solid silver light. The radiance expanded, forming a seal over the gaping hole, forcing back the darkness that sought entry. The creature below raged against the barrier, its howls shaking the corrupted church to its foundations. Pieces of the ceiling began to collapse as the structure destabilized. "We need to get out!" Thaddeus shouted over the cacophony. "The building's coming down!" Eleanor could barely hear him. All her concentration focused on maintaining the seal, channeling her life force into the barrier keeping the world separated. She felt herself weakening, her vision darkening at the edges as her energy depleted dangerously. Strong arms encircled her waist, pulling her away from the pit. She fought weakly, knowing that if her concentration broke, the seal might fail. "Eleanor," Ronan's voice penetrated her fading consciousness. "It's done. The breach is sealed. You did it." She looked back to see he was right. The pit had collapsed in upon itself, the pendant's light forming a permanent seal over the boundary. The corrupted book lay in ashes, Eleanor's sword gleaming untarnished beside it. Of Marshall there was no sign, whether destroyed with the book or escaped, she couldn't tell. "The villagers," she managed, her voice barely audible. "Victoria and Thaddeus are getting them out," Ronan assured her. "We need to leave too, now." He lifted her in his arms as the church's transformation began to reverse itself. Without the breach feeding it power, the blight's hold weakened. The unnatural growth crumbled to dust. The black veins receded. The twisted architecture began to collapse. Eleanor's last conscious sight was of Ronan carrying her through the failing doorway, silver light still emanating from her eyes as darkness claimed her mind. She woke to birdsong and the scent of pine. Opening her eyes revealed not the village, but a familiar cave ceiling. Eleanor lay on the same comfortable pallet where she'd first met Ronan in his human form, though now the space was illuminated by natural light from the entrance rather than firelight. "Welcome back," Myrtle's voice greeted her. The forest witch sat nearby, grinding herbs in a small mortar. "You've been asleep for 3 days." Eleanor tried to sit up, finding her body weak but intact. "Ravenwood? The villagers?" "Safe, thanks to you," Myrtle assured her. "The Blight's immediate influence has been purged, though those who were deepest in its thrall will carry scars, both visible and invisible, for some time." Memory returned in a rush. "My pendant was sacrificed to seal the breach," Myrtle confirmed. "A noble use of an ancient artifact. Your ancestors would approve." Eleanor's hand went instinctively to her throat, feeling strangely vulnerable without the familiar weight of the silver medallion. "And my sword?" "Here," came Ronan's voice from the cave entrance. He entered carrying the blade, which still gleamed with inner light. Purified by its contact with the book, it's stronger now, if anything. Eleanor accepted the sword gratefully, feeling its comforting resonance with her bloodline. "Marshall?" Ronan's expression darkened. "No trace. The Blight may have claimed him entirely, or he may have escaped in the chaos. Either way, he wasn't among the villagers we rescued." "Blackthorn will have him," Myrtle said grimly. "The Blight never wastes a useful vessel." Eleanor absorbed this information silently. Then another concern surfaced. "Victoria? Thaddeus?" "Both well," Ronan assured her. "The Elder has proven surprisingly knowledgeable about your bloodline. Apparently his family has served as secret keepers for generations, watching over Ravenwood since your ancestors established the village as a ward against the Blight." "He knew my parents," Eleanor realized. "That's why he protected me all these years. And why he gave you the pendant," Myrtle added, "though I don't think he expected you to sacrifice it quite so dramatically." Eleanor managed a weak smile. "Neither did I. It just felt right." "The bloodline wisdom," Ronan explained. "Your ancestors guiding your instincts." "Speaking of ancestors," Myrtle said, rising from her seat, "there's something you should see when you're strong enough, a legacy your parents left specifically for you." Eleanor's heart quickened. "What is it?" "A sanctum," Ronan answered, "hidden deep within Shadow Mist Forest. We discovered it while you recovered, guided by markings on your sword's hilt that appeared after the battle. It contains records, training materials, and artifacts gathered by generations of Silverthorns," Myrtle elaborated. "Everything you'll need to fulfill your role as guardian." Eleanor contemplated this revelation. "So this isn't over?" "Far from it," Ronan confirmed solemnly. "You've won a significant battle, but the war continues. The Blight was weakened but not destroyed. It will recover, adapt, and attack again." "The breach is sealed for now," Myrtle added, "but there are others throughout the region, some known to us, others yet to be discovered. Each represents a potential entry point for the Blight's influence." Eleanor nodded slowly, accepting the responsibility that came with her bloodline. "Then I'd better get stronger. How soon can we visit this sanctum?" "When you've fully recovered," Ronan insisted. "Another day or two at least." Eleanor started to protest, but recognized the wisdom in his words. She was alive but depleted, her newly awakened powers temporarily diminished by the enormous effort of sealing the breach. "What about Ravenwood?" she asked instead. "How have they reacted to everything?" Myrtle and Ronan exchanged glances. "That's somewhat complicated," Myrtle admitted. "Most recall little of their time under the Blight's influence, a blessing perhaps. They know you saved them, though the details remain hazy in their minds." "Thaddeus has been instrumental in reshaping the narrative," Ronan added, "presenting you as a protector rather than a witch. Victoria, too, has spoken forcefully on your behalf." "And my eyes?" Eleanor touched the skin beneath them. "They still fear them?" "Some do," Myrtle acknowledged honestly. "Old fears die hard, but respect has begun to replace terror. It's a start." Eleanor nodded, unsurprised. Generations of superstition couldn't be erased in a single day, no matter how dramatic the revelation. "Will you return there?" Ronan asked, his tone carefully neutral. Eleanor considered the question. Ravenwood had been her home, yet never truly accepted her. Now she understood why. She had never truly belonged there. Her purpose lay elsewhere, with a different legacy. "I'll visit," she decided. "There are people I care about, Victoria, Thaddeus, but my place is here now, in Shadowmist Forest, with the Council, with my heritage." She glanced at Ronan. "If I'm welcome, that is." Something softened in his expression. "More than welcome. The forest has sung of your return for generations, Eleanor Silverthorn. Your presence brings balance long missing from these woods." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken eventually by Myrtle clearing her throat pointedly. "Well, I should inform the Council of your recovery," she announced with a knowing smile. "Fenris will be particularly pleased. He won a substantial wager with Sylvan regarding your success." As Myrtle departed, leaving Eleanor and Ronan alone, questions surfaced that had been submerged beneath more urgent concerns. "You knew my parents well," Eleanor observed. "Were you there when they performed the ritual? When they died?" Pain flickered across Ronan's features. "I was. Your father made me promise to watch over you from afar, to be ready when your powers awakened. I failed him in some respects. I should have found you sooner, prepared you better." "You found me when it mattered most," Eleanor assured him, "when the Blight forced my exile into the forest." Ronan moved closer, sitting beside her pallet. "There's something you should know. The last words your mother spoke, they were for you. She said, 'Tell Eleanor that our sacrifice was made with love, not duty. Never let her believe otherwise.'" Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes, the first she had allowed herself since awakening to her heritage. "Thank you for telling me." Impulsively, she reached for Ronan's hand. He hesitated, then entwined his fingers with hers. The contact sent a current of warmth up her arm. "The Wolf King and the last Silverthorn," she mused softly. "My ancestors would find that interesting." "More than interesting," Ronan replied, a hint of mischief in his blue eyes. According to forest legend, the joining of wolf and silver blood was prophesied centuries ago. Fenris nearly had an apoplexy when he realized the possibility. Eleanor laughed, the sound bright and unexpected in the quiet cave. "Is that why he was so grumpy with me?" "Partly," Ronan admitted. He fears change, even necessary change. Eleanor sobered. And what do you fear, Wolf King? Ronan's gaze held hers, centuries of loneliness visible in his ancient eyes. Failing those who depend on me, losing those I care for, again. The unspoken emotion behind his words hung in the air between them. Eleanor understood with sudden clarity that Ronan's interest in her went beyond duty to her parents or the prophecy. Before she could respond, a commotion sounded outside the cave. Raven swooped in, feathers ruffled with excitement. "Visitors," he announced. "From the village, the elder and the friend girl. They bring news." Eleanor attempted to rise, Ronan supporting her as she found her feet. Though weak, she stood proudly, sword in hand, ready to face whatever new challenges awaited. "Bring them in," she instructed. "We have much to discuss." As Thaddeus and Victoria entered, bringing news of Ravenwood's recovery and strange sightings in the surrounding countryside, Eleanor felt a sense of purpose crystallize within her. The path ahead would be difficult, filled with dangers she was only beginning to understand. But she would face them as Eleanor Silverthorn, guardian of the boundaries, protector of both human and forest realms. And she would not face them alone. A fortnight passed since Eleanor sealed the breach beneath Ravenwood's church. Autumn painted Shadow Mist Forest in fiery hues, the ancient trees shedding their summer mantles for crowns of amber, crimson, and gold. Morning frost crystallized on fallen leaves as Eleanor followed Ronan along a hidden path deep within the forest's heart. "How much farther to this sanctum?" she asked, her breath forming misty clouds in the crisp air. "Not far," Ronan replied, pushing aside a curtain of hanging vines. "The entrance lies just beyond the twin sentinels." Eleanor had regained her strength more rapidly than even Myrtle had anticipated. The Silverthorn bloodline carried remarkable resilience, her body adapting to the awakened powers flowing through her veins. Each day brought new discoveries as she explored her inherited abilities, sensing energy currents, communicating with forest creatures, channeling power through her mother's sword. Thaddeus and Victoria had returned to Ravenwood after ensuring Eleanor's recovery, bearing news both hopeful and concerning. The village slowly healed from the blight's influence, physical corruption receding from buildings and land. Most affected villagers recovered their faculties, remembering little of their time under the dark influence. Yet troubling reports filtered in from outlying farms and neighboring settlements. Livestock found mutilated in unnatural ways. Strange lights seen in distant woods. Hunters returning with tales of twisted creatures glimpsed between trees. The blight, though driven back, continued its insidious work beyond Ravenwood's borders. There, Ronan indicated ahead, where two enormous oak trees stood like ancient guardians. Their massive trunks, each wider than 3 men could encircle, grew so close together that their branches had intertwined over centuries, forming a natural archway. As they approached, Eleanor's pendant, a replacement crafted by Sylvan from a branch of her own essence, grew warm against her skin. The silver eyes embedded in the wooden medallion seemed to gleam with inner light. "The sentinels recognize Silverthorn blood," Ronan explained. "They were planted by the first of your line to arrive in these lands over 4 centuries ago." Eleanor approached the ancient trees reverently. Placing her palm against one gnarled trunk, she felt energy pulse beneath the bark, not the corruption of the blight, but something pure and purposeful. The tree's life force responded to her touch, a wordless greeting passed from guardian to guardian. "Now what?" she asked softly. "Your blood will reveal the way," Ronan replied. "A small offering only." Understanding dawned through her ancestral memories. Eleanor drew her mother's sword and carefully pricked her fingertip on its razor edge. A single droplet of blood fell to the earth between the twin oaks. The effect was immediate. The ground shimmered, earth and roots rearranging to reveal stone steps descending into darkness. Cool air rushed upward, carrying the scent of parchment, metal, and ancient magic. "The Silverthorn Sanctum," Ronan announced. "Untouched since your parents' final visit over 20 years ago." Eleanor descended the steps, silver light emanating from her eyes to illuminate their path. The stairway curved gently downward, walls lined with smooth stone etched with the same symbols found on her original pendant. After 30 steps, they emerged into a chamber that took Eleanor's breath away. The sanctum was vast, far larger than seemed possible beneath the twin oaks. Circular in shape, its domed ceiling glittered with embedded crystals mimicking constellations. Stone pillars carved to resemble ancient trees supported the structure, their branches spreading across the ceiling in intricate patterns. At the chamber's center stood a raised dais with a pedestal holding a large crystal sphere. Surrounding it were workbenches, bookshelves, weapon racks, and sealed chests. Every wall bore maps, diagrams, and meticulously recorded observations of boundary breaches throughout the region. "My family built all this?" Eleanor whispered, awed by the scope of her heritage. "Over many generations," Ronan confirmed. Each silverthorn added to the knowledge, the tools, the methods of protecting the boundaries. Eleanor approached the central pedestal. The crystal sphere pulsed with gentle light as she neared, responding to her presence. Within its depths, shadows moved, not the malevolent darkness of the blight, but images forming and dissolving like memories given form. "The memory sphere," Ronan explained. "It contains the collective experiences of your bloodline, more complete than what you received at Moonshadow Pool, more focused than the generalized knowledge passed through your pendant." Eleanor reached toward the sphere hesitantly. "How do I access it?" "Your touch will suffice. But be prepared. The experiences are intense, sometimes overwhelming. I suggest starting with recent memories first." Eleanor steeled herself and placed her palm against the cool crystal surface. The sphere flared brilliantly, light enveloping her consciousness. She stood within a memory, the sanctum as it had been 22 years earlier. A man and woman worked frantically, gathering books, weapons, and artifacts. Eleanor recognized them instantly through the inherited memories from Moonshadow Pool. Her parents, her father, Jonathan, tall and scholarly, with the same silver eyes she saw in her own reflection. His movements precise as he assembled components for some complex ritual. Her mother, Eliza, fierce and determined, her silver eyes blazing as she etched protective symbols around the chamber's perimeter. The memory contained sound. She could hear their voices. "The signs are unmistakable," Jonathan was saying, his voice tight with controlled fear. "The blight stirs earlier than predicted. The boundary thins near Ravenwood." "We're not ready," Eliza replied, checking the edge on a silver-bladed dagger. "The child comes in less than a month. The ritual requires more preparation." "We have no choice," Jonathan countered. "If we wait, the breach will widen beyond our ability to seal it. Eleanor will be born into a world already lost." Eleanor's heart clenched at hearing her name spoken by the father she'd never known. They had planned for her, prepared for her arrival, even as they faced their own mortality. "Thaddeus is prepared?" Eliza asked, securing a leather-bound journal within a hidden compartment. "He understands his role. If anything happens to us, he'll ensure the child reaches maturity safely. My mother will raise her away from the forest until the blight's attention turns elsewhere." "And Ronan?" Eliza's voice softened. "You've spoken with him?" Jonathan nodded, emotion briefly overwhelming his scholarly composure. "He's sworn to watch over her when the time comes, to guide her as he guided us." Eliza approached her husband, taking his hands in hers. "We always knew this might be our fate, Jonathan, from the moment we took up the Silverthorn mantle." "I know," he replied, pressing his forehead to hers. "I just wish we could see her grow, see her become the guardian she's destined to be." "We will," Eliza promised fiercely. "Through the memory sphere, through the bloodline connection, part of us will always be with her." The image shifted, jumping forward in time. Eleanor now witnessed her own birth, a difficult delivery in this very sanctum, her mother's cries echoing off ancient stone as Jonathan worked desperately to ease her pain while maintaining protective wards around them. Then came the moment she entered the world, tiny and red-faced, silver eyes blinking up at parents who regarded her with wonder and heartbreak intermingled. "Eleanor," her mother whispered, cradling her close, "our beautiful girl, our hope." The memory blurred again, advancing to what Eleanor somehow knew were the final moments before the ritual. She was days old, sleeping peacefully in her grandmother's arms as the elderly woman prepared to take her away from the forest, away from the parents who would soon sacrifice everything to buy her time to grow strong. "Remember your promise, Mother," Jonathan said, embracing the older woman. "Keep her safe, keep her hidden. When she's ready, the forest will call her home." "I will guard her with my life," her grandmother vowed, tears streaming down lined cheeks. "And I will tell her of you both, of your courage, your love." Eliza kissed baby Eleanor's forehead one last time, a tear falling onto the infant's cheek. "Be strong, my silver-eyed daughter. Your path will not be easy, but you will never walk it alone. We will always be with you, in blood and memory." The vision faded, leaving Eleanor standing once more in the present-day sanctum, tears streaming down her face. Ronan stood nearby, his expression reflecting understanding of what she had witnessed. "They loved you," he said simply, "beyond duty, beyond legacy. Everything they did was to give you a chance at life." Eleanor wiped her tears, her heart full with emotions too complex for words. "I understand now, truly understand." She turned in a slow circle, taking in the sanctum with new eyes. This wasn't just a repository of knowledge or a base of operations. It was her birthright, her inheritance, her home in the truest sense. "Show me everything," she said with newfound determination. "I need to learn all they knew, everything the Silverthorns have gathered over centuries. The blight still threatens, and I intend to be ready." Over the following days, Eleanor immersed herself in the sanctum's knowledge. The memory sphere revealed generations of Silverthorn experiences, battles against corrupted creatures, techniques for sealing minor breaches, methods of purifying blighted areas. Each memory built upon her awakened abilities, refining raw power into precise skill. The sanctum's library contained journals dating back to the first Silverthorn's arrival in America. A woman fleeing persecution in Europe, drawn to the powerful boundary nexus within Shadow Mist Forest. Maps documented known breaches throughout the region, some sealed generations ago, others requiring regular maintenance to prevent the blight's influence from seeping through. Most valuable were her parents' final journals, detailing their discoveries about the blight's nature and methods. Her father's meticulous research suggested the corruption was not merely destructive, but transformative, seeking to remake the world according to its own twisted vision of reality. "It doesn't simply want entry to our world," Eleanor explained to Ronan as they studied the journals together. "It wants to remake our world into an extension of its own realm." "That aligns with what we've observed," Ronan agreed. "The physical corruption is merely a symptom of a deeper transformation, reality itself warping under the blight's influence." Eleanor traced her finger over a diagram in her father's journal, concentric circles representing different worlds with boundaries between them. "My father believed our world exists at a critical junction between realms of light and darkness. If the blight fully manifests here, it gains access to multiple worlds simultaneously. Which is why the Silverthorns have always focused on this region," Ronan concluded. "The boundary is naturally thinner here than elsewhere." Their research was interrupted by Raven's arrival, the bird swooping through the sanctum entrance with unusual urgency. "Visitors from Ravenwood," he announced, settling on a wooden perch. "The Elder and several others. They bring troubling news." Eleanor and Ronan exchanged concerned glances before ascending to the surface. Outside, autumn sunlight filtered through golden leaves as Thaddeus Montgomery approached, accompanied by Victoria and several village men carrying hunting rifles. "Eleanor," Thaddeus called out, relief evident in his weathered features. "Thank the heavens we found you." "What's happened?" Eleanor asked, noting the exhaustion and fear etched on their faces. "Marshall has returned," Victoria answered, her voice tight with suppressed terror. "Or something wearing his form. He came in the night with creatures. They took 6 villagers before we drove them back." "Took them where?" Ronan demanded. "North," one of the hunters answered, a man Eleanor recognized as Ravenwood's Cooper. "Toward the mountains. We tracked them as far as Blackwater Ridge before losing the trail." "Blackwater Ridge," Ronan repeated, his expression darkening. There's an old mining complex there, abandoned decades ago. The council has long suspected it might contain a dormant breach. Not dormant anymore, Thaddeus said grimly. Strange lights have been seen around the old mine entrance for weeks. We thought little of it until now. Eleanor's mind raced, connecting pieces of information from her studies. My father's journal mentioned Blackwater. He suspected a minor breach sealed by earlier silverthorns, but considered it stable. The blight adapts, Ronan reminded her. What was once sealed may be weakening, especially with Marshall serving as its vessel now. The missing villagers, Eleanor said, a sickening realization forming. The blight doesn't just want territory. It needs vessels, human vessels to extend its influence. Like Marshall, Victoria whispered, horror dawning on her face. Yes, but more. Eleanor turned to Ronan. My father's research suggested the blight cannot fully manifest in our world without anchors, corrupted human vessels that can channel and focus its essence. A ritual, Thaddeus concluded with grim understanding. Marshall is preparing a ritual using the kidnapped villagers as sacrifices or vessels. Eleanor nodded. We need to stop him before it's completed. How long ago were they taken? Last night, the Cooper answered, just after midnight. Then we have little time, Eleanor decided. The phase of the moon suggests the ritual would be most effective tomorrow night at moonrise. You've learned much in a short time, Thaddeus observed with approval. I've had exceptional teachers, Eleanor replied, glancing at Ronan before focusing on the task at hand. We'll need to gather the council. This threat requires more than just Silverthorn intervention. Preparations moved swiftly. Raven was dispatched to summon the council members, while Eleanor returned to the sanctum to gather weapons and artifacts effective against the Blight's corruption. Ronan sent word to the Wolf clan, calling his pack to join the coming battle. By evening, a war council had assembled in a clearing near the twin sentinels. Sylvan's towering form stood beside Myrtle's more human appearance. Fenris leaned on his staff, his ancient eyes sharp despite his apparent age. 3 wolves from Ronan's pack lounged at the clearing's edge, their intelligent gazes following the proceedings. The humans formed their own group: Thaddeus, Victoria, and 4 of Ravenwood's most capable hunters. They had come prepared for battle, with weapons ranging from traditional flintlocks to more modern hunting rifles. Ordinary weapons will have limited effect on fully corrupted beings, Eleanor cautioned. I've brought these. She unveiled a collection of weapons from the sanctum, daggers with silver blades, arrows tipped with a crystalline substance that glowed faintly in the gathering dusk, and vials of luminescent liquid. Purification elixir, she explained, distributing the vials. Created by my ancestors. It can temporarily drive back corruption or, in humans not fully transformed, potentially reverse the process. What of those already taken? Victoria asked, her concern evident. Can they be saved? Eleanor exchanged glances with the council members before answering honestly. It depends how far the corruption has progressed. Those recently taken may be recoverable. Those who've undergone the full ritual transformation. She left the grim conclusion unspoken. What exactly are we facing at Blackwater Mine? The Cooper asked, nervously checking his newly acquired silver-bladed knife. Myrtle stepped forward, casting a handful of herbs into the council fire. The flames shifted, forming images within the smoke, the abandoned mining complex carved into the mountainside, its entrance now warped with organic-looking growths that pulsed with unnatural life. The mine extends deep into the mountain, she explained, the smoke changing to show tunnels descending into darkness. Originally dug for silver, ironically enough, the miners unknowingly excavated too close to a thin point in the boundary. When a collapse killed 27 men in 1879, the mine was abandoned. My great-grandfather sealed the breach, Thaddeus added, working with the Silverthorn guardian of that generation. The journals in my family's keeping describe a simple containment rather than a full sealing. They lacked the resources for more. And now it weakens, Fenris growled, with that traitor Marshall directing the Blight's efforts. What of Blackthorn? Eleanor asked. Will he be there as well? Ronan nodded grimly. Almost certainly. The wolf who betrayed his kind, and the human who betrayed his, working in concert to serve the blight. Our approach must be careful, Eleanor decided, studying the smoke images. A direct assault would alert them and potentially accelerate the ritual. I know another way in, Thaddeus offered unexpectedly. The mining company created a secondary shaft for ventilation and emergency evacuation. It's not on any official maps, but my family kept records of all potential breach access points. The smoke shifted at Myrtle's command, revealing the hidden entrance Thaddeus described, a narrow shaft on the mountain's western face, far from the main entrance. This could work, Eleanor mused. A small group enters through the secondary shaft, while a larger force creates a distraction at the main entrance. I'll lead the secondary team, Ronan volunteered immediately. My senses are sharpest in enclosed spaces. And I'll accompany you, Eleanor added. Victoria, too, if she's willing. Her connection to Marshall might prove useful if he retains any humanity. Victoria straightened, determination overcoming fear. I'll go. Those are my people they've taken. The rest will approach from the main entrance, Eleanor continued, not attacking immediately, but making enough noise to draw attention away from our infiltration. My wolves will join the distraction team, Ronan decided. Their howls carry well in the mountains. As will I, Sylvan announced, her wooden features shifting into something more fearsome. The blight has corrupted enough of my forest. It shall not claim the mountains as well. Plans solidified as night deepened. The attack would commence the following afternoon, allowing the infiltration team to get into position before the presumed ritual at moonrise. Everyone understood the stakes, not just the lives of 6 villagers, but potentially the safety of the entire region if the blight succeeded in establishing another foothold in their world. As the council dispersed to prepare, Eleanor found herself standing alone at the clearing's edge, watching stars emerge above Shadow Mist Forest. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily, lives depending on her leadership, her power, her decisions. Doubting yourself? Thaddeus asked, approaching quietly despite his age. Eleanor sighed, wondering if I'm ready. I've had mere weeks to absorb generations of knowledge, to master abilities I didn't know existed before my exile. Now I lead people into battle against an enemy I'm still learning to understand. Your parents faced similar doubts, Thaddeus revealed. I remember your father pacing outside my cabin the night before they performed their ritual, questioning whether their preparations were sufficient, whether the sacrifice was justified. What did you tell him? The same thing my father told his father, and so on through generations of Montgomery service to the Silverthorn line. Thaddeus placed a weathered hand on Eleanor's shoulder. Doubt is wisdom's shadow. Only fools proceed without it. But don't let it paralyze you when action is needed. Eleanor nodded, drawing strength from the elder's confidence. You knew all along, didn't you? What I was, what I would become. I suspected, Thaddeus admitted. Your grandmother shared only what was necessary for your protection, but your eyes told the truth. I did what I could to shield you, though perhaps not enough. You did more than anyone, Eleanor assured him. The pendant you gave me saved Ravenwood, perhaps the world. One battle won, Thaddeus reminded her soberly. The war continues, as it has for centuries. But not alone, came Ronan's voice as he approached. The Silverthorns once stood with many allies. Those alliances weaken, but never fully broke. The Council, the Wolf Clan, Ravenwood, Eleanor acknowledged, united against a common threat. As it should be, Thaddeus agreed. Now rest, Eleanor Silverthorn. Tomorrow tests us all. Dawn broke clear and cold over Shadow Mist Forest. Eleanor rose early, preparing methodically for the coming confrontation. She donned leather armor from the sanctum, crafted specifically for Silverthorn guardians, lightweight but reinforced at vital points, etched with protective symbols that gleamed faintly when she channeled power through them. Her mother's sword hung at her hip, fully restored after its contact with the corrupted book. Additional weapons were distributed among the infiltration team, silver daggers for Victoria and Thaddeus, vials of purification elixir for everyone. They departed the forest as morning mist still clung to the ancient trees, traveling north toward the looming mountains. The journey took most of the day, forests gradually giving way to rocky slopes and sparse pines. By mid-afternoon, they reached the rendezvous point, a sheltered valley within sight of Blackwater Ridge. From their vantage point, the corruption was clearly visible even at a distance. The mountain's natural gray stone had darkened near the main mine entrance, black veins spreading outward like infection through healthy tissue. Unnatural growths clung to the surrounding cliffs, pulsating occasionally as if breathing. "It's worse than I feared," Ronan observed grimly. "The blight establishes itself quickly." "Can you sense the missing villagers?" Victoria asked anxiously, scanning the corrupted landscape. Eleanor closed her eyes, extending her senses as her training in the sanctum had taught her. Silver energy spread outward from her consciousness, seeking the familiar life signatures of human beings. "They're alive," she confirmed after a moment. "Deeper in the mine, their life forces are altered, but not yet fully corrupted. There's still time." Relief washed over Victoria's features. "And Marshall? Can you sense him?" Eleanor's expression darkened. "Yes, but his energy signature is barely recognizable as human anymore." "The blight has nearly completed his transformation." "Into what?" Thaddeus asked. "A vessel," Ronan answered. "A physical anchor for the blight's manifestation in our world. If the ritual completes successfully, Marshall will become a permanent breach in human form, able to spread corruption wherever he goes. And the others will become his lieutenants," Eleanor added. "Lesser vessels, but dangerous nonetheless." The infiltration team separated from the main force as planned. Sylvan led the distraction group toward the mine's main entrance, while Eleanor, Ronan, Victoria, and Thaddeus circled west toward the hidden secondary shaft. They found it exactly where Thaddeus's family records indicated, a narrow opening partially concealed by fallen rocks and scrubby vegetation. Unlike the main entrance, this shaft showed minimal signs of corruption, suggesting the blight remained unaware of its existence. "I'll go first," Ronan declared, transforming smoothly into his wolf form. In this shape, his senses would be sharpest, able to detect dangers that human perception might miss. Eleanor followed, silver light emanating from her eyes to illuminate the narrow passage. Victoria and Thaddeus came after, moving cautiously through the confined space. The shaft descended at a gentle angle, periodically intersected by wooden support beams now rotted with age. After several hundred feet, it connected with a larger horizontal tunnel, part of the mine's extensive network. Ronan paused, scenting the air, then indicated they should proceed left. Eleanor sensed his reasoning. Corruption grew stronger in that direction, suggesting they were moving toward the ritual site. As they advanced deeper into the mine complex, signs of the blight's influence became more pronounced. Fungal growths with unsettling resemblance to human features clung to walls. The air grew thick with a sweet, cloying scent that made breathing difficult. Moisture on the stone floor reflected their light with rainbow iridescence, like oil on water. Distant sounds reached them, rhythmic chanting in a language that hurt the ears, punctuated by occasional moans of pain or fear. The missing villagers. Ronan shifted briefly to human form to whisper, "We're close. The main chamber lies beyond the next junction. I smell many corrupted beings gathered there." "The distraction team should be in position by now," Thaddeus noted, checking a pocket watch. "We should hear them soon." As if summoned by his words, a cacophony erupted from the direction of the main entrance, howling wolves, splintering wood, and Sylvan's thunderous voice shaking the very mountain. The chanting ahead faltered momentarily. Harsh commands echoed through the tunnels, Marshall's voice, distorted but recognizable, ordering defenders to the main entrance. "Now," Eleanor whispered, "while they're distracted." They moved swiftly through the final stretch of tunnel, emerging onto a narrow ledge overlooking a vast natural cavern. The scene below froze Eleanor's blood despite her preparation. In the chamber's center, a perfect circle had been etched into the stone floor, filled with symbols that pulsed with sickly green light. At 6 equidistant points around the circle, the kidnapped villagers were bound to stone pillars, alive but clearly altered, their skin marbled with black veins, eyes occasionally flashing solid black before returning to normal. Standing at the circle's center was Marshall, or what remained of him. His form had grown, stretching to nearly 8 feet tall. His skin had the texture of wet leather, black veins visible beneath. His face retained human features, but distorted, elongated, with too many teeth visible when he spoke. Most disturbing were his eyes, pools of absolute darkness that seemed to extend beyond his skull. Beside him stood Blackthorn, the corrupted wolfman snarling orders to lesser blighted creatures as they rushed to defend the main entrance. "They haven't completed the ritual," Eleanor whispered. "We still have time." "What's the plan?" Victoria asked, her voice steady despite the horror below. Eleanor assessed the situation rapidly. "I can disrupt the ritual circle, but I'll need time. Ronan, can you engage Blackthorn? Keep him occupied?" The Wolf King nodded grimly. "With pleasure. Long has this reckoning been due." "Thaddeus and Victoria, focus on freeing the villagers. Use the elixir on those you can reach. It should clear their minds enough to assist their own escape." A commotion from a side tunnel indicated some defenders returning, the distraction discovered or controlled. "Go now," Eleanor commanded. "I'll cover your descent." As her companions moved toward stone steps leading down to the main floor, Eleanor drew her mother's sword. Silver light blazed along its length as she channeled power through the blade. With practiced motions, she cut specific patterns in the air before her, symbols learned from the memory sphere, designed to disrupt corrupt energy. The effect was immediate. Green light flickering through the ritual circle sputtered and dimmed. Below, Marshall's distorted head snapped up, black eyes fixing directly on Eleanor's position. "Silverthorn!" he snarled, voice layered with something ancient and malevolent beneath his own tones. "You're too late. The alignment approaches. The vessels prepare." "I think not," Eleanor replied, leaping from the ledge to land at the chamber's edge, silver light blazing around her. "This ends now, Marshall." "Marshall is merely the primary vessel now," the creature responded. "Soon he will be so much more, the permanent anchor between worlds, the living breach." Ronan charged in wolf form, massive and terrible in his fury. He slammed into Blackthorn with bone-crushing force, driving the corrupted wolfman away from the ritual circle. Their battle became a blur of teeth, claws, and bestial rage, ancient enemies settling a blood debt. Thaddeus and Victoria moved stealthily along the chamber's perimeter, reaching the first bound villager, the blacksmith's apprentice, a boy barely 16. Victoria administered the purification elixir while Thaddeus cut his bonds. The boy gasped as awareness returned to his eyes, the black veins beneath his skin receding slightly. "Get him out through the secondary shaft," Eleanor called to them. "Then return for the others." Marshall, or the thing wearing his form, laughed, a sound like stones grinding together. "Their corruption has already begun. The vessels are prepared. Only the final binding remains." He raised clawed hands, green energy crackling between his fingers. With a savage gesture, he hurled this power at Eleanor. She deflected it with her sword, silver light meeting corrupt green in a spectacular collision that shook dust from the cavern ceiling. Eleanor advanced steadily, sword describing complex patterns that disrupted the energies Marshall commanded. Each step closer to the ritual circle caused visible pain to the corrupted man, his form shuddering as Silverthorn power interfered with the blight's hold. "You cannot stop what comes," Marshall growled, desperation creeping into his tone. "The boundaries weaken everywhere. My master finds new breaches daily. Even if you thwart this ritual, others will succeed." "Perhaps," Eleanor acknowledged, continuing her inexorable approach. "But not here. Not today. Not with these innocent lives." Marshall's form suddenly convulsed, dropping to one knee as the green energy surrounding him fluctuated wildly. Eleanor realized the cause. Victoria had reached another villager, administering the purification elixir. The ritual's symmetry was breaking down. With a roar of frustration, Marshall abandoned subtlety. He charged Eleanor directly, corrupted flesh granting him unnatural speed and strength. His clawed hands sought her throat, black ichor dripping from his fingertips. Eleanor met his charge with practiced precision, techniques absorbed from generations of Silverthorn guardians flowing through her muscle memory. She sidestepped at the last instant, her silver blade slicing across Marshall's extended arm. The corrupted flesh sizzled where silver touched it, black ichor spraying as Marshall howled in pain and rage. The wound began to close almost immediately, but slower than before, the blight's power diminishing as the ritual circle continued to lose energy. Across the chamber, Ronan and Blackthorn fought with primordial savagery. The Wolf King's silver-white fur was stained with blood, both his own and the black ichor leaking from his opponent. Despite his injuries, Ronan fought with the measured discipline of centuries, wearing down his corrupted foe through superior technique and endurance. Eleanor seized her advantage, pressing Marshall back toward the ritual circle's center. Each step on the corrupt symbols disrupted their power further, the green light flickering and dying beneath her feet. "You'll die for this interference," Marshall threatened, his form beginning to destabilize, portions of his flesh shifting between solid and semi-liquid states as the blight struggled to maintain control. "Many Silverthorns have died protecting the boundaries," Eleanor replied calmly. "I accepted that possibility the moment I embraced my heritage." She unleashed a focused blast of silver energy from her blade, striking Marshall directly in the chest. The corrupted man staggered backward, black ichor erupting from a wound that refused to close. For an instant his eyes cleared, normal human eyes showing through the corruption, filled with pain and confusion. "Eleanor?" Marshall's voice emerged briefly, his true self surfacing through the blight's control. "What's happening to me?" Compassion flickered through Eleanor despite everything Marshall had done. In that moment of clarity, she glimpsed the man he had been, not evil by nature, but corrupted by forces beyond his understanding. "You opened something you shouldn't have, Marshall," she answered honestly. "But it's not too late. Fight it. Reject the blight's influence." Conflict played across his distorted features as the human consciousness battled the corrupting entity for control. For a heartbeat, it seemed Marshall might break free. Then his expression hardened, black corruption flooding back into his eyes. "Weak vessel," the layered voice snarled. "Unworthy, but sufficient for now." He lunged again, moving with desperate fury. Eleanor parried his attacks, silver blades slicing through corrupted flesh repeatedly. Each wound weakened the blight's hold further, black ichor pooling at Marshall's feet as he staggered back. A triumphant howl echoed through the cavern. Ronan stood victorious over Blackthorn's broken form, the traitor wolf's corruption dissolving as death claimed him. The Wolf King, bloodied but unbowed, turned his attention toward Eleanor's battle. Thaddeus and Victoria had freed 4 of the 6 villagers, the purification elixir clearing their minds enough to assist with the remaining 2. The ritual circle now flickered weakly, most of its symbols dead and powerless. Sensing defeat approaching, the entity controlling Marshall made a final desperate attempt. He slammed both hands into the cavern floor, channeling corrupting energy directly into the stone beneath them. The ground trembled ominously, cracks spreading throughout the chamber as the mountain itself groaned in protest. "If I cannot complete the ritual," Marshall's distorted voice declared, "then all shall perish here. My master's influence already runs deep within this mountain. It will become your tomb." Eleanor realized his plan, to collapse the mine with everyone inside, buying time for the blight to establish another foothold elsewhere. She had seconds to act. Calling upon her deepest reserves of Silverthorn power, Eleanor thrust her blade into the ritual circle's center. Silver energy exploded outward, flowing through the corrupt symbols and transforming them. Where green sickness had pulsed, pure silver light now spread, reinforcing the chamber against collapse. "No!" Marshall screamed, his form beginning to dissolve as the counteracting energy overwhelmed the blight's hold. "My master will return. The boundaries will fall." "Not while I stand guard," Eleanor declared, channeling even more power through her mother's sword. The blade glowed white-hot with energy, threatening to burn away in her hand, but she maintained her grip through sheer will. The silver light reached Marshall, enveloping his corrupted form. For a brief moment, his expression cleared once more, the real Marshall visible beneath the corruption. "Thank you," he whispered, genuine gratitude in his voice, before silver fire consumed his form entirely. When the light faded, nothing remained of Marshall or the ritual circle. The chamber stood purified, the blight's influence burned away by Silverthorn power. The mountain's trembling subsided, structural integrity restored. Eleanor staggered, nearly falling as exhaustion claimed her. Ronan was immediately at her side, supporting her weight. "It's done," she murmured, looking around at the freed villagers being tended by Victoria and Thaddeus. "We stopped the ritual." "And closed another breach," Ronan confirmed. "The mountain will heal now." From the main tunnel came sounds of victory, the distraction team having driven back or destroyed the remaining corrupted creatures. Sylvan's towering form appeared first, followed by Myrtle, Fenris, and the victorious wolf pack. "The Silverthorn succeeds," Fenris acknowledged, genuine respect in his ancient eyes. "Perhaps there is hope yet for the boundaries." Eleanor managed a tired smile. "Not just me. All of us together." She surveyed their unlikely alliance, forest spirits, wolf shifters, village humans, united against a common threat, as it was meant to be. Later, as they helped the rescued villagers from the mountain, Eleanor paused to look back at Blackwater Ridge. The corruption had already begun to recede, the mountain's natural stone showing through as healthy gray replaced sickly black. One battle won in an ancient war, one breach sealed while others still threatened. The blight remained active elsewhere, seeking new entry points, new vessels, new methods to infiltrate their world. But for the first time in generations, the forces opposing it stood united. Eleanor Silverthorn, last of her bloodline, but first of a new covenant between human and forest kind, would ensure the boundaries held firm against the darkness beyond. As if sensing her thoughts, Ronan's hand found hers, his touch conveying strength and something deeper, something still unspoken between them. "What comes next, Guardian?" he asked softly. Eleanor's silver eyes turned toward the horizon, where other mountains waited, other forests, other communities potentially threatened by the blight's influence. "We prepare," she answered simply. "We learn. We grow stronger together." The path ahead remained challenging, fraught with dangers she was still learning to understand. But Eleanor no longer walked it alone, and in that knowledge she found hope for the battles to come. Winter descended upon Shadow Mist Forest, transforming the ancient woods into a realm of crystalline beauty. Snow draped the massive trees in pristine white mantles, silence broken only by the occasional crack of frost-laden branches and the soft padding of wolf paws through fresh powder. 3 months had passed since the confrontation at Blackwater Mine, a season of recovery, preparation, and vigilance. Eleanor Silverthorn stood at the edge of a frozen lake, her breath forming misty clouds in the frigid air. Silver eyes surveyed the landscape, enhanced vision detecting the subtle energy currents flowing beneath ice and snow. The forest appeared peaceful, yet her senses detected lingering corruption, black veins of blight influence running deep beneath certain areas, weakened but not entirely eradicated. "The eastern boundary holds firm," she reported as Ronan approached in human form, his footsteps nearly silent despite the crusty snow. "But there's still weakness near the old lightning-struck oak." Ronan nodded, his keen blue eyes following her gaze across the winter landscape. "Myrtle set additional wards there yesterday. The corruption retreats, but slowly." Since Blackwater, Eleanor had established a systematic approach to monitoring Shadow Mist's boundaries. Regular patrols with Ronan's wolves, energy mapping with techniques learned from her ancestors, and carefully placed warning wards created by Myrtle all formed a comprehensive defense network. The Silverthorn Sanctum had become their command center, Eleanor's permanent home, and the heart of their resistance against the blight. "Ravenwood reports no further incursions," Ronan continued, brushing snow from his leather coat. "Thaddeus has trained a small group of villagers in basic recognition and defense techniques." Eleanor smiled faintly. "The old Montgomery tradition continues. His ancestors would be proud." Relations with Ravenwood had improved dramatically since the rescue of the kidnapped villagers. While some residents remained wary of Eleanor's silver eyes, most now viewed her with cautious respect rather than fear. Victoria had become their primary liaison, dividing her time between village life and training with Eleanor in basic protection methods. "Any word from the northern settlements?" Eleanor asked as they began walking along the lake's edge, following a patrol route they'd established weeks earlier. "Raven returned last night," Ronan replied, his expression darkening. "The situation in Millerton worsens. 3 more disappearances, strange lights reported in the abandoned quarry, livestock born with mutations." Eleanor's heart sank. Millerton lay 2 days' journey north of Ravenwood, a logging community of several hundred souls. Reports of blight activity there had increased steadily since winter's arrival. Their most recent intelligence suggested another breach forming, smaller than Blackwater, but potentially just as dangerous if left unchecked. "We can't wait any longer," she decided, coming to a halt and facing Ronan directly. "Fenris was right. We must address Millerton before the corruption establishes a stronger foothold." Ronan studied her face, concern evident in his ancient eyes. "You've only just recovered your full strength after Blackwater. Another confrontation so soon is necessary," Eleanor finished firmly. "The blight doesn't rest, so neither can we." They had discussed this extensively with the council over the past week. Sylvan advocated caution, suggesting they focus on strengthening Shadow Mist's defenses before extending their reach. Fenris, characteristically impatient, argued for immediate action. Myrtle remained neutral, counseling balance between protection and intervention. "The memory sphere shows similar patterns to what my grandfather faced in 1843, Eleanor continued, referencing her intensive studies of ancestral experiences. "The blight establishes multiple smaller footholds when direct manifestation fails. Each one weakens the overall boundary until the cumulative effect creates a catastrophic failure," Ronan acknowledged grimly. "I know the history, Eleanor. I lived through part of it." They resumed walking, silence settling between them as they considered the implications. After a moment, Ronan spoke again, his tone softening. "It's not just your physical recovery that concerns me," he admitted. "Blackwater took a toll beyond the obvious. I've seen you at night, studying until dawn, pushing yourself beyond reasonable limits." Eleanor couldn't deny the observation. Sleep came reluctantly these days, haunted by visions from both memory sphere and personal experience. Marshall's brief moments of humanity before silver fire consumed him, the kidnapped villagers' terrified eyes, Blackthorn's corrupted form dissolving into nothingness. "The Silverthorn burden," she murmured, echoing words her father had written in journals she'd found in the sanctum. "Knowledge brings responsibility." Ronan stopped walking, gently turning Eleanor to face him. Snow fell lightly around them, catching in her auburn hair and on her eyelashes. "Your father also wrote about balance," he reminded her. "The Silverthorn who loses themselves entirely to duty becomes brittle, eventually breaking when flexibility is needed most." Eleanor's eyes met his, silver light reflecting the winter landscape. "Is that what you fear for me? That I'll break?" "I fear losing you," Ronan answered with uncharacteristic directness. "To the blight, to exhaustion, or to the weight of legacy you carry." The admission hung between them, more significant for its rarity. The Wolf King rarely expressed such personal concerns, his centuries of life having taught him emotional reserve. Yet over the past months, the boundaries between them had gradually thinned, professional respect evolving into deeper connection. Eleanor reached up, her gloved hand touching his face briefly. "I'm stronger than you think, Wolf King." A small smile touched his lips. "Of that I have no doubt, Silverthorn." The moment passed, both returning to the practicalities at hand. "We should convene the council tonight," Eleanor suggested. "If we're to address Millerton, we'll need a comprehensive strategy." "Agreed. I'll send word to—" Ronan stopped abruptly, his head tilting as if listening to something beyond human perception. Eleanor sensed it a moment later, a disturbance in the forest's energy pattern, a ripple of urgency carrying through the ancient trees. Sylvan was calling them, her wooden form unable to leave the deep forest, but her consciousness extending throughout Shadow Mist. "Something's happened," Ronan confirmed, already shifting toward wolf form. "We're needed at the Heart Grove immediately." Eleanor nodded, gathering her energy. Months of training had refined her abilities considerably. With practiced focus, she channeled silver power through her body, enhancing her natural speed and endurance. Together they raced through the winter forest, covering ground with supernatural swiftness. The Heart Grove lay at Shadow Mist's center, where Sylvan had first taken root centuries earlier. The massive tree woman stood waiting, her wooden features arranged in an expression of grave concern. Nearby, Myrtle worked over what appeared to be an injured figure lying on a bed of moss. As they approached, Eleanor recognized Victoria, her face ashen with pain and exhaustion, clothing torn and stained with both blood and black ichor. "Victoria!" Eleanor rushed forward, kneeling beside her friend. "What happened?" "Millerton," Victoria gasped, wincing as Myrtle applied a poultice to a wound on her arm. "It's worse than we thought. Much worse." Eleanor's gaze moved to the injury, a deep gash from shoulder to elbow, its edges tinged with the telltale black of blight corruption. Myrtle worked methodically, applying a mixture of herbs and purification elixir that caused the darkness to recede, though slowly. "Start from the beginning," Ronan instructed, resuming human form. "Why were you in Millerton?" "Thaddeus sent me," Victoria explained between labored breaths. "His cousin's family lives there. Hadn't heard from them in weeks. I was supposed to deliver a letter, check on their welfare, nothing more." She shuddered, memories clearly painful. The town appears normal from a distance, but inside, people walk the streets with empty eyes, black veins visible beneath their skin when they turn certain ways. They smile too widely, speak with odd pauses. "Full infiltration," Myrtle murmured, not looking up from her work. The corruption spread subtly, maintaining appearances while taking root. "I tried to leave as soon as I realized," Victoria continued, "but they knew. Somehow they knew I wasn't affected. A group cornered me near the quarry. That's when I saw it." "Saw what?" Eleanor prompted gently, sensing Victoria's growing distress. "A structure. In the quarry pit. Not built, but grown. Black stone like nothing I've ever seen, pulsing with its own heartbeat. People were bringing offerings, food, belongings, animals, children." Her voice broke on the last word. Eleanor and Ronan exchanged alarmed glances. This went beyond their expectations. Not just a forming breach, but an established foothold, with physical manifestation already underway. "How did you escape?" Ronan asked. "There was a girl," Victoria replied, her voice steadier as Myrtle's medicine took effect. "Maybe 12 years old, working in the general store. She helped me slip out through a storage cellar. Her eyes were clear. Not everyone is turned yet." "Some naturally resist the blight's influence," Sylvan interjected, her wooden form creaking as she shifted. "Particularly the very young and the very old. Their connection to natural forces provides limited protection." Eleanor processed this information rapidly, implications crystallizing in her mind. "The structure Victoria describes matches accounts from my great-grandfather's time. A physical manifestation of the blight's power, a conduit allowing its influence to spread more efficiently." "A dark mirror of the sanctum," Ronan suggested grimly. "Yes," Eleanor agreed. "But this changes our approach completely. We're not preventing a breach anymore. We're dealing with an established infestation." Myrtle finished treating Victoria's wound, wrapping it in clean bandages infused with protective herbs. "The corruption is contained, but she needs rest. The exposure was significant." "Take her to the sanctum," Eleanor decided. "The protective wards will aid her recovery." As Myrtle helped Victoria to her feet, the injured woman caught Eleanor's arm. "There are still innocent people there, Eleanor. Not everyone is corrupted. That girl risked everything to help me." "We'll do everything possible to save them," Eleanor promised. "Rest now. You've done more than enough." After Victoria was safely taken to recover, the council gathered in the Heart Grove to assess their options. Fenris arrived last, his ancient form materializing from swirling snow. "Millerton requires immediate intervention," Eleanor began without preamble. Based on Victoria's report, the blight has established a physical anchor point, what my ancestors called a dark stone. If allowed to mature, it will become a permanent breach, immune to conventional sealing methods. How long do we have? Fenris demanded. Eleanor calculated based on historical accounts. The winter solstice is 3 days hence. Given the blight's typical patterns, that would be the optimal time to complete the structure's empowerment. 3 days, Ronan repeated. Not much time to prepare a comprehensive assault. We can't risk waiting, Sylvan cautioned, leaves rustling with agitation. Once fully established, a darkstone requires tremendous power to destroy, more than even a silverthorn might safely channel. Eleanor nodded grimly. My ancestors documented only 2 previous encounters with mature darkstones. In both cases, the silverthorn guardians succeeded in destroying them, but at tremendous cost. They died, Fenris stated bluntly. Yes, Eleanor confirmed, but they left detailed records of the confrontations. With proper preparation, I believe we can succeed without such sacrifice. The discussion continued into the evening, strategies proposed and refined. Intelligence gathering would come first. Raven volunteered to conduct aerial reconnaissance of Millerton, assessing the Darkstone's development and identifying potential allies within the community. Meanwhile, Eleanor would prepare specialized weapons and artifacts from the sanctum, items specifically designed to counter the Blight's manifestations. Ronan would coordinate with the Wolf Clan, establishing perimeter security around Millerton to prevent the corruption from spreading further. We'll depart tomorrow at dawn, Eleanor concluded as the council adjourned. That gives us 2 days to implement our plan before the solstice. As the others dispersed to begin preparations, Ronan remained behind with Eleanor. Snow had stopped falling, moonlight casting the heart grove in silvery illumination that reflected off frozen surfaces. There's something you're not telling the others, he observed quietly. Something in those ancestral records troubles you more than you've admitted. Eleanor smiled faintly. After months of close companionship, Ronan had become adept at reading her subtle expressions. You know me too well, Wolf King. She sighed, breath forming crystals in the winter air. The accounts of the Darkstone confrontations are incomplete. Both Silverthorns who faced them wrote their final observations before the battles, not after. We know they succeeded because the breaches closed, but we don't know exactly how they accomplished it. You're walking into this partially blind, Ronan concluded. The Silverthorn legacy is full of such gaps, Eleanor acknowledged. My ancestors often faced unique manifestations of the Blight, with no precedent to guide them. Adaptation is part of our heritage. Ronan studied her face in the moonlight. There's more. What else troubles you? Eleanor hesitated, then decided complete honesty was necessary between them. The memory sphere showed me fragments of the final confrontations. Both times, the Silverthorn channeled power beyond safe limits, essentially sacrificing themselves to destroy the Darkstones. And you fear the same choice awaits you, Ronan stated, his voice carefully neutral. I don't fear death, Eleanor replied softly. But I fear leaving work unfinished, battles unfought. The Blight would simply return, perhaps stronger than before. Ronan's hand found hers, warm despite the winter chill. Then we find another way, together. The sincerity in his voice touched something deep within Eleanor, a counterbalance to the weight of legacy she carried. Together, she agreed, gripping his hand firmly. They walked in companionable silence through moonlit forest toward the sanctum, where preparations awaited. Whatever the coming days might bring, Eleanor drew strength from the knowledge that she faced it not as her ancestors had, alone with their duty, but surrounded by allies who shared her purpose. Dawn broke clear and cold as their expedition departed Shadow Mist Forest. Eleanor led, clothed in traditional Silverthorn battle attire recovered from the sanctum, supple leather reinforced at vital points, etched with protective symbols that glowed faintly with her power. Her mother's sword hung at her hip, its silver blade humming with accumulated energy from overnight charging in the sanctum's focusing chamber. Ronan accompanied her in human form, though 4 of his wolf clan ranged ahead as scouts. Myrtle had provided specialized elixirs and protective charms for each member of their party. Raven soared overhead, his keen eyes monitoring their surroundings. Thaddeus had insisted on joining them despite his age, his experience with previous blight incursions proving invaluable during planning. He rode a sturdy mountain pony, carrying additional supplies and ammunition for the silver-infused bullets his family had crafted for generations. Victoria wanted to come, he mentioned as they made their way through snow-covered hills beyond the forest boundary. Nearly snuck out of the sanctum this morning before Sylvan caught her. Her assistance in Ravenwood is more valuable, Eleanor replied, and her wound needs more time to heal completely. In truth, Eleanor worried about Victoria's exposure to the blight. Though Myrtle's treatment had contained the corruption, such contact often left invisible scars, nightmares, sensitivities to corrupt energy, occasional disorientation. Better for Victoria to remain within the sanctum's protective influence for now. They traveled swiftly but cautiously, avoiding main roads where corrupted patrols from Millerton might wander. By midday, they crested a ridge that offered their first distant view of the logging town. Eleanor extended her enhanced vision, silver eyes penetrating the ordinary appearance of the settlement below. Black energy swirled invisibly around the buildings, concentrated most heavily around the church steeple and flowing toward the quarry beyond the town's eastern edge. The corruption radiates from the Darkstone, she observed, but it uses existing structures as conduits, particularly places of significance to the community. Same pattern as Ravenwood, Thaddeus noted. The blight exploits human connection to place. Makes tactical sense, Ronan added. Corrupting locations that people trust inherently speeds infiltration. They established a temporary camp in an abandoned hunter's cabin 2 miles from town, close enough for observation while remaining outside the immediate sphere of blight influence. Raven returned from his reconnaissance as evening approached, feathers ruffled with agitation. "Darkstone grows," he reported, settling on a wooden beam. "Twice the size noted yesterday. Black crystal structure, approximately 30 feet high, resembling inverted spire. Humans work constantly, bringing materials, performing rituals. Some appear fully corrupted, black eyes, altered movements, others partially affected, still aware but compelled to participate." "Any sign of resistance?" Ronan asked. "Small group hides in old lumber mill," Raven confirmed. "Mostly children, few elders. They sense wrongness but don't understand nature of threat." Eleanor considered this information carefully. Potential allies, or at least innocent bystanders we need to protect during our intervention. Thaddeus spread a rough map of Millerton across a wooden table, marking the quarry's location and the lumber mill Raven had mentioned. The town layout naturally channels movement toward the quarry, single main street, buildings arranged in straight lines. If we're going to approach the Darkstone, we need a less predictable route. "The old mining tunnels," Ronan suggested, indicating a series of dotted lines on the map's eastern edge. "They were abandoned decades ago, but should connect to the quarry's lower levels." "Potentially crawling with corrupted entities," Thaddeus cautioned. "But less heavily watched than surface approaches," Eleanor countered. "The blight often overlooks what it can't directly perceive." They refined their strategy into the night, accounting for various contingencies. The plan crystallized. Eleanor and Ronan would infiltrate through the mining tunnels, while Thaddeus established contact with the resistance in the lumber mill, organizing evacuation of unaffected townspeople. "We should rest," Eleanor finally suggested as midnight approached. "Tomorrow requires full strength from all of us." Sleep came reluctantly despite her exhaustion. In dreams, Eleanor wandered corridors of black crystal, voices whispering from walls, offering power beyond imagination in exchange for surrender. She recognized the blight's typical approach, temptation preceding corruption, but knowing the source didn't diminish the dream's disturbing impact. She woke before dawn to find Ronan already alert, tending a small fire in the cabin's stone hearth. "The dreams came," he observed without question. Eleanor nodded, accepting a cup of herbal tea he offered. Always the same offer: power without limitation, knowledge without restriction. "And the cost?" Ronan asked, though he knew the answer. "Everything that matters," Eleanor replied quietly. humanity, compassion, connection. They shared companionable silence as darkness gradually yielded to winter dawn. Eleanor found herself studying Ronan's profile in the firelight, noting the subtle signs of weariness he typically concealed beneath stoic resolve. "You should know," she began carefully, "that whatever happens today, these past months have meant more to me than I can adequately express." Ronan's blue eyes met hers, centuries of loneliness momentarily visible behind his carefully maintained reserve. "Eleanor, let me finish," she insisted gently. "My ancestors walked their paths largely alone, believing isolation was necessary to fulfill their purpose. I've learned differently. Connection doesn't weaken resolve. It strengthens it, gives it meaning beyond mere duty." She reached across the space between them, her hand finding his. "Whatever comes, I face it gladly knowing our paths joined, however briefly." Ronan's fingers interlaced with hers, warm and solid. "Our paths joined permanently the moment you entered Shadow Mist Forest," he replied, his usually measured voice rough with emotion. "Whatever comes today, it is merely another step we walk together, not an ending." The moment lingered, possibilities unspoken but acknowledged between them. Then, with practiced discipline, both returned their focus to the immediate challenge. There would be time for personal matters after Millerton, if fate allowed. They departed as planned, separating at the town's outskirts. Thaddeus headed toward the lumber mill, disguised as an ordinary traveler seeking shelter. Eleanor and Ronan circled east, locating the abandoned mine entrance half buried beneath decades of forest reclamation. "The corruption hasn't reached here yet," Eleanor observed as they cleared debris from the tunnel entrance. "That gives us an advantage, however temporary." Inside, the tunnel stretched dark and silent, support beams sagging with age, but still functional. Eleanor's silver eyes provided sufficient illumination as they navigated the complex, following old rail tracks that led toward the quarry. "Listen," Ronan whispered, after they'd traveled nearly half a mile underground. Water flowing, and voices. Eleanor heard it too, distant chanting in that same unnatural language she'd encountered at Blackwater. The sound raised goosebumps along her arms, not from fear, but from instinctive recognition of boundary violation, something from beyond forcing its way into their reality. They proceeded with increased caution, eventually reaching a junction where the mining tunnel intersected with the quarry's lower level. Through a partially collapsed opening, they gained their first direct view of the Darkstone. The structure dominated the quarry floor, a massive crystalline formation of impossible black stone that absorbed rather than reflected light. Unlike natural crystal, its geometry seemed wrong somehow, angles connecting in ways that confused the eye and disturbed the mind. Pulsing veins of sickly green energy ran throughout, beating in unnatural rhythm like a monstrous heart. Around its base, townspeople worked in coordinated precision, some laying additional black stones harvested from surrounding rock, others performing ritualistic movements that channeled corrupt energy from themselves into the structure. Overseeing their work stood a figure that made Eleanor's blood run cold. "Marshall," she whispered, recognizing the corrupted form despite significant changes since Blackwater. The vessel that had once been Ravenwood's blacksmith's son had transformed further, taller now, nearly 9 feet in height, his form more crystalline than flesh, black veins visible throughout a body that seemed partially transparent in certain light. His face retained vague human features, though distorted beyond recognition. "Not Marshall anymore," Ronan replied softly. "The vessel evolved, became something new, a Blight Lord, according to old legends." Eleanor accessed her ancestral memories, confirming Ronan's assessment. When human vessels survived initial corruption, they sometimes developed into specialized forms, higher servants capable of independent action while still connected to the Blight's central consciousness. "This complicates matters," she acknowledged grimly. "My ancestors encountered Blight Lords rarely, but records indicate they're significantly more dangerous than standard corrupted beings." "They can think tactically," Ronan added. "Adapt to threats rather than simply reacting." Eleanor studied the scene below, refining their approach based on this new information. The dark stone remained their primary target. Destroy it, and the Blight's foothold would collapse. But the Blight Lord would defend it fiercely, with capabilities beyond what they'd faced at Blackwater. We need a diversion, she decided. Something to draw attention away from the Darkstone long enough for me to implement the purification ritual. Ronan nodded. I'll engage the Blight Lord directly. My wolf form can match his physical capabilities, at least temporarily. Eleanor wanted to object. The danger was extreme, but recognized the tactical necessity. The Sanctum artifacts should give you some protection against corruption, she said instead, removing several small silver charms from her pack and pressing them into his hand. The confrontation at the lumber mill should begin soon, Ronan noted, securing the charms to his clothing. Thaddeus will create additional distraction from that direction. Eleanor checked her preparations one final time. The ritual components were secure in specialized pouches at her belt. Her mother's sword hummed with accumulated power. The silver pendant at her throat, Sylvan's replacement for the one sacrificed at Ravenwood, pulsed warmly against her skin. Remember, she cautioned, if something happens to me, focus on evacuating the uncorrupted townspeople. The boundary can be reinforced later if necessary. Ronan's expression hardened. Nothing will happen to you, he stated with quiet intensity. We succeed together, or not at all. Eleanor managed a small smile despite the gravity of their situation. So stubborn, Wolf King. A necessary quality when dealing with Silverthorns, he replied, returning her smile briefly, before his expression shifted to battle readiness. On my signal, then. They separated, taking positions at different access points to the quarry floor. Eleanor watched as Ronan circled to the western approach, waiting until he was in position before giving the subtle hand signal they'd agreed upon. Ronan transformed instantly, his human form blurring into the massive black wolf that had first intercepted Eleanor in Shadow Mist Forest. Silver charms remained embedded in his fur, gleaming with protective energy. With a bone-chilling howl that echoed throughout the quarry, he launched himself directly toward the Blight Lord, becoming a blur of midnight fur and flashing teeth. The corrupted workers turned at the disturbance, movements jerky and uncoordinated as the Blight Lord roared commands. Chaos erupted across the quarry floor as Ronan engaged their leader in direct combat, massive wolf forms slamming into crystalline flesh with devastating impact. Eleanor seized the opportunity, sprinting from cover toward the Darkstone's southern face, the direction her ancestral memories identified as most vulnerable. The structure loomed larger as she approached, its wrongness more apparent at close range. Reality seemed to bend around it, distance and perspective shifting unnaturally. Several corrupted workers noticed her approach, lurching to intercept with blackened hands reaching. Eleanor drew her mother's sword, silver light blazing along its length. With practiced precision, she disabled rather than killed her attackers. Precise strikes to limbs that disrupted the Blight's control temporarily, without fatal injury to the humans it possessed. Reaching the Darkstone's base, Eleanor felt its malevolent energy washing over her in nauseating waves. Black crystal seemed to pulse faster as it sensed her Silverthorn presence, recognizing an existential threat. Working swiftly, she removed ritual components from her pouches: silver dust, crystallized moonlight, purified water from Shadow Mist's heart, and finally, a small vial containing her own blood drawn during preparations the previous night. Silverthorn blood, the most potent catalyst for boundary reinforcement. Nearby, Ronan battled the Blight Lord with supernatural ferocity, silver charms allowing him to engage corrupted flesh directly without immediate contamination. The creature fought with terrible strength, its crystalline limbs reshaping into weapons as needed. Blades, whips, crushing appendages that shattered stone where they struck. Eleanor forced herself to focus solely on the ritual, trusting Ronan to maintain the distraction. Following ancestral instruction, she marked a perfect circle around herself with silver dust, then specific symbols at cardinal points. Purified water created connections between symbols, forming a complex pattern that resonated with boundary energy. From the town's direction came sounds of additional commotion. Thaddeus implementing his phase of the plan, evacuating uncorrupted townspeople from the lumber mill under cover of controlled chaos. The Darkstone reacted violently as Eleanor's preparations advanced, black crystal vibrating at frequencies that made her teeth ache and vision blur. Corrupt energy lashed out, testing her protective circle for weaknesses. "Silver sight, silver blood," Eleanor chanted, activating the ritual with traditional Silverthorn words. "Boundary holds, worlds divide, light from shadow, truth from lie." Her pendant flared with brilliant radiance as she completed the initial invocation. Silver energy flowed from the circle's edge upward, forming a dome of pure light that isolated her and the Darkstone's base from outside influence. The Blight Lord noticed immediately, his crystalline head turning toward Eleanor despite Ronan's continued assault. With a roar of fury, he hurled the massive wolf aside and charged toward the ritual circle, sensing the existential threat to his master's foothold. Eleanor continued the ritual, knowing interruption now would be catastrophic. "By blood and lineage sworn, by sacrifice empowered, by will maintained," she intoned, unstoppering the vial of her blood and pouring it onto the central symbol before her. The blood didn't spread normally, but instead hovered momentarily before absorbing into the quarry floor. Silverthorn energy surged in response, silver light intensifying until it rivaled daylight in brilliance. The Blight Lord reached the edge of Eleanor's protective dome, crystalline fists hammering against the energy barrier with apocalyptic force. Cracks appeared in the silver light, spreading rapidly as corruption sought entrance. Eleanor reached the ritual's critical juncture. According to ancestral records, this was the moment where previous Silverthorns had sacrificed themselves, channeling their entire life force into a final, devastating pulse that destroyed the Darkstone but consumed them in the process. As the barrier weakened and the Blight Lord prepared to breach her defenses, Eleanor made a different choice, not from fear of sacrifice, but from insight gained through months of studying her heritage. "Not alone," she whispered, reaching for her pendant. "Never alone." Where her ancestors had channeled only their individual power, Eleanor opened herself to the collective energy of Shadow Mist Forest, the ancient trees, the Wolf Clan, the council members who had performed a supporting ritual at the Heart Grove before her departure. Most importantly, she drew upon her connection to Ronan, whose unwavering presence had changed her understanding of what strength truly meant. Silver light exploded outward from Eleanor's form, not consuming her, but flowing through her as a conduit for power greater than any single Silverthorn could generate alone. The energy struck the Darkstone with precision, following fault lines invisible to ordinary sight but clear to her silver eyes. Black crystal screamed, not metaphorically but literally, an unholy sound of boundary violation being forcibly corrected. Fissures appeared throughout the structure, corrupt green energy leaking like ichor from a mortal wound. The Blight Lord howled in sympathetic agony, his crystalline form destabilizing as the Darkstone began to collapse. "This changes nothing, Silverthorn," his layered voice boomed. "My master finds new pathways, new vessels. Your victory is temporary." "Perhaps," Eleanor acknowledged, maintaining the energy flow with unwavering concentration. "But today, this boundary holds." With a final surge of power, she completed the purification ritual. Silver energy coalesced into a perfect sphere that enclosed the Darkstone entirely, then contracted with irresistible force. The black crystal imploded, collapsing inward until nothing remained but a fine dust that silver fire quickly consumed. The backlash knocked Eleanor backward, ritual circle dissipating as its purpose completed. She would have fallen if not for Ronan, who had somehow reached her side despite injuries from his battle with the Blight Lord. "It's done," she gasped, momentarily weakened but fundamentally intact, the first Silverthorn in recorded history to destroy a Darkstone without sacrificing herself in the process. Around them, corrupted workers collapsed as the controlling influence vanished. Some would recover fully, others, longer under the Blight's dominion, might never regain their original selves. The Blight Lord had vanished during the Darkstone's destruction, not destroyed, but banished back beyond the boundary, at least temporarily. "You did it," Ronan said, supporting Eleanor as they surveyed the quarry. "You found another way." "We did it," she corrected, leaning against him as strength gradually returned to her limbs. "The approach worked because I wasn't alone." Thaddeus appeared at the quarry's edge, leading a group of townspeople, mostly children and elders, as Raven had reported. They gazed in wonder and confusion at the scene below, unable to fully comprehend what had transpired, but sensing the wrongness had been lifted. "The boundary is reinforced," Eleanor explained as they made their way toward the survivors. "Stronger than before, at least in this location. The Blight won't find easy access here again." "But it will try elsewhere," Ronan noted, helping her navigate the uneven quarry floor. "Yes," Eleanor acknowledged. "The war continues, as it has for generations. But today, we've proven something my ancestors never fully realized, that unity provides strength beyond what any individual guardian could achieve alone." As they reached Thaddeus and the survivors, the winter sun broke through clouds, illuminating the quarry in clear light. Where the dark stone had stood, a perfect circle of purified ground remained, already showing tiny green shoots emerging from the previously corrupted soil, life returning where corruption had been banished. Eleanor gazed across the scene with silver eyes that now saw beyond mere physical reality to the intricate energy patterns connecting all living things. The boundary between worlds had been reinforced, not through isolated sacrifice, but through connected strength. In that moment, Eleanor Silverthorne fully embraced her heritage not as a burden to be carried alone, but as a shared purpose strengthened through bonds with others. The path ahead remained challenging, with battles yet unfought and mysteries unsolved, but she would walk it differently than her ancestors, not as a solitary guardian, but as part of something larger, something stronger. "What comes next?" Thaddeus asked, as they began organizing the survivors for the journey to safety. Eleanor's silver eyes met Ronan's blue ones, unspoken understanding passing between them. "We continue," she replied simply. "Together." The Blight would return in new forms, seeking new breaches, adapting to their defenses as it had for centuries. But so would they adapt, learn, and grow stronger in unity. The Silverthorne legacy would continue, transformed but unbroken, guardian of the boundaries between worlds. As winter sun illuminated their path homeward, Eleanor felt a sense of purpose clearer than any she had known since discovering her heritage. The last Silverthorne had found her place, not alone in sacrifice, but united in strength with those who shared her fight against the darkness beyond.